Chapter 292. After the people from the Star River Association left, Bai Lui stared at Qin Wendian with a smile that was not a smile on her face, causing Qin Wendian to have a look of bewilderment on his face as he teased, "Am I really that good-looking?" The Star River Association is extremely mysterious. Those who are able to receive their invitation are all geniuses with great potential. And this time around, the leader of the weaponsmithing branch of the Star River Association personally came to invite you. This can be considered as giving you a lot of face. Bai Lu Yi's eyes flashed with a brilliant light as she stared at Qin Wendian. Back then, when Qin Wendian was acquainted with Qin Wendian, he had snuck into the White Deer Institute to learn divine inscriptions from her. Who would have thought that in such a short period of time, Qin Wendian would have already reached such a level? How astonishing! The leader of the weaponsmithing branch of the Star River Association personally came to invite him, yet he was rejected. How could you reject him so decisively without even considering it? I'm afraid the leader of the Star River Association would feel that he has lost face. Bai Lu Yi bitterly smiled as she shook her head. Although Qin Wendian had already tactfully rejected, it was still a little too direct. I don't want to have too much to do with this power. Qin Wendian casually shrugged his shoulders. In this world, one shouldn't worry too much about everything. It was too tiring to consider even the smallest of matters. As a person, there was no need to be so accommodating. Ultimately, he would still do things according to his heart. He didn't have a good impression of the Star River Association. Maybe it was unreasonable for him to vent his anger on the Star River Association because of what happened in Chu. But in this world, how could one be so rational? If he liked something, he liked it. If he didn't like it, he didn't like it. Fine, let's go meet the members of the Thousand Jew Alliance. I wonder why you have such an opinion of the Star River Association. Bai Lu Yi smiled as she brought Qin Wendian to another manor, where the people of the Thousand Jew Alliance were already waiting. Both parties naturally exchanged a few more pleasantries before they got down to business. Grandmaster Qin, I'm sure you've already guessed the reason why I'm here. The Thousand Jew Alliance is divided into the Inner League and Outer League. The Inner League is the strength of the Thousand Jew Alliance and exists in the form of a sect. As for the Outer League, they are the guest elders. Only those with extraordinary abilities would be invited by the Thousand Jew Alliance. Opposite to Qin Wendian was a woman. She was middle-aged but still had her charm. She looked very capable and experienced, and when she spoke, she made people feel close to her. Qin Wendian nodded his head lightly when he heard Qin Wendian's words. It was very easy to understand the difference between the Inner and Outer League. The Inner League was the strength of the Thousand Jew Alliance, similar to the Pill Emperor Hall of the Star-Seizing Manor. There was a strict hierarchy, and the juniors of the younger generation had to obey the orders of their elders. But for the Outer League, the Thousand Jew Alliance wouldn't intentionally nurture them, nor could they order them to do anything. The Thousand Jew Alliance had already investigated and found out that Qin Wendian didn't belong to any sect and didn't belong to the White Deer Institute. It seemed that he only had a romantic relationship with Bai Lu Yi. This was what many in the White Deer Institute thought. Grandmaster Qin, if you are willing to join the Inner League of our Thousand Jew Alliance, you will naturally be nurtured as a core disciple. But if you join the Outer League, you will be directly promoted to a 5th Jew Guest Elder and enjoy the privileges of a 5th Jew Guest Elder without any restrictions. The woman smiled at Qin Wendian. Her smile was extremely clean, causing people to feel comfortable in their hearts. It was indeed very suitable for such a character to act as a middleman for the Thousand Jew Alliance. Bai Lu Yi, who was standing at the side, felt her heart trembling slightly. After Qin Wendian became a 4th-ranked Grandmaster, the Thousand Jew Alliance had indeed attracted a lot of attention. The foundations of the Thousand Jew Alliance were weaker compared to the other transcendent powers, hence they placed more emphasis on recruiting talents. And now, for the sake of Qin Wendian, they were willing to directly give him the position of a 5th Jew Guest Elder. Bai Lu Yi knew that there were 9 levels of Guest Elders in the Thousand Jew Alliance. The first level was the lowest, while the 9th level was the highest. Those at the first level were juniors with more potential, those at the second level were those with outstanding talent, those at the third level were those with a certain level of fame, those at the fourth level were only those who were able to step into the Heavenly Fate rankings, and as for the fifth Jew guest elders, only Heavenly Dipper's sovereigns had the qualifications to converse with Heavenly Dipper's sovereigns of the Thousand Jew Alliance, and enjoy a lot of authority. As for the sixth Jew guest elders, it wasn't just a matter of having sufficient potential or strength. They had to have made great contributions to the Thousand Jew Alliance, and the sixth Jew guest elders even had the authority to mobilize Heavenly Dipper's sovereigns of the Thousand Jew Alliance for help. The status of a seventh Jew guest elder was already exceedingly high. A ninth Jew guest elder was also known as a Thousand Jew guest elder. They had the qualifications to converse with the Thousand Jew Alliance leader, and the authority they wielded was already comparable to the peak characters of the Thousand Jew Alliance. And now, the Thousand Jew Alliance directly gave Qin Wendian the title of a fifth Jew guest elder. This was equivalent to having the highest authority. No restrictions. Qin Wendian smiled as his eyes shone with a bright light. Nope. The lady shook her head as she smiled. Our Thousand Jew Alliance was formed by an alliance of unaffiliated cultivators. Our foundation is slightly weaker compared to some of the transcendent powers, but it's precisely because of our recruitment of talents that we have grown stronger and stronger, to the point where we can contend against the other transcendent powers. Naturally, we have to give them sufficient respect, and as for outstanding talents, the Thousand Jew Alliance will provide assistance without any restrictions. Qin Wendian smiled and nodded his head. This was indeed an extremely tempting offer. Naturally, let me make this clear first. Below the fifth Jew guest elders, including the fifth Jew guest elders, the Thousand Jew Alliance will provide you with some authority, for example, to gather information, to purchase treasures, etc. But because there are no restrictions, if a guest elder were to be hunted down by experts, our Thousand Jew Alliance will not provide any reinforcements. That's only natural. Qin Wendian nodded his head. How ridiculous would it be to enjoy some authority and still want others to protect him? However, it's different for a sixth Jew guest elder. Because a sixth Jew guest elder would have to make a certain amount of contributions to the Thousand Jew Alliance before they can be promoted. Hence, a sixth Jew guest elder would be able to request for assistance from a Heavenly Dipper sovereign of the Thousand Jew Alliance. If it's a seventh Jew guest elder, they can directly mobilize a Heavenly Dipper sovereign of an area. The middle-aged lady smiled. I accept. As the sound of his voice faded, Qin Wendian laughed. There were only benefits to this. He couldn't find any reason to reject. Grandmaster Qin is indeed straightforward. The lady smiled. After which, she took out a command token with the words Fifth Jew engraved on it. After which, she reminded Grandmaster Qin, there's one thing I have to ask Grandmaster Qin to remember. This command token can only be used by the owner of the token. If we discover that someone is impersonating the owner of the token, the Thousand Jew Alliance will act according to the situation. In fact, we might even kill the imposter on the spot. I understand. Qin Wendian nodded his head. This was probably because they were worried that if a guest elder of the Thousand Jew Alliance died, the medallion would fall into the hands of others. If that was the case, things would be even more chaotic. Since that's the case, I shall return to report the completion of the mission. Grandmaster Qin would definitely be extremely happy to be a guest elder of our Thousand Jew Alliance. The words of the middle-aged lady were extremely pleasing to the ears. Qin Wendian and Bailu Yi stood up to send her off. Qin Wendian held the Thousand Jew medallion in his hands as a smile appeared on his face. There was something he wanted to do. The reason why he came to the Moon Continent was precisely because of this. Kill Hua Xiaoyun. Back then, in the Mo clan of Chu, Hua Xiaoyun dared to do such despicable things to Mo Qingcheng, causing her to commit suicide. This matter was like a thorn in Qin Wendian's heart. Not only that, he didn't even have the chance to bid farewell to Mo Qingcheng. Mo Qingcheng had already left Chu, arriving at the Pill Emperor Hall. Although the Pill Emperor Hall was just a few feet away from him, it was extremely difficult for him to even meet her. Mo Qingqing must have suffered a heavy blow as well. Now, he didn't even know how she was doing. If Hua Xiaoyun didn't die, he would never be able to rest in peace. Just when Qin Wendian wanted to kill Hua Xiaoyun, how could Hua Xiaoyun not want to kill him, Qin Wendian? In a certain inn, Hua Xiaoyun crushed the wine cup in his hand into dust. Because he heard a name in the inn, Qin Wendian. These 3 words were exceptionally ear-piercing to the ears. Instantly, an ice-cold killing intent gushed forth from Hua Xiaoyun, causing those in the surroundings to retreat far away from him. Hua Xiaoyun naturally hated Qin Wendian. Once, he was the 2nd-generation ancestor of the Hua clan, able to do whatever he wanted. However, a single trip to Chu had almost caused him to be consigned to eternal damnation. One of his arms was severed by Qin Wendian, and after he returned, this matter caused a huge commotion. After that, as Mo Qingqing's status rose higher and higher in the Pill Emperor Hall, the elders of the Hua clan almost didn't hand him over to Mo Qingqing to be punished. The Hua clan wanted his elder brother, Hua Taishu, to marry Mo Qingqing, but the things Hua Taishu had done in the past had become a thorn in their side. If it weren't for the fact that he was Hua Taishu's younger brother, he would have been in an extremely miserable state. But even so, he was still in a miserable state. His status in the Hua clan had plummeted to the point where he couldn't even command the more powerful members of the Hua clan. Only his parents had left him a heavenly dipper sovereign to act as his bodyguard. After the outsiders learned of this, they all looked down on him and severed all ties with him. How could Hua Xiaoyun not see through all these changes? His current situation could only be described with one word: miserable. And now, upon hearing the name of Qin Wendian, one could only imagine the killing intent in his heart. Qin Wendian and Hua Xiaoyun, at the same time, despite the vast distance between them, both had an intense killing intent towards each other. Qin Wendian, a 4th-ranked grandmaster. I really want to see if he's that Qin Wendian. A cold killing intent flickered in Hua Xiaoyun's eyes as he stood up and walked out of the inn. Young master, where are we going? One of the guards asked. The Shadow Pavilion, Hua Xiaoyun coldly replied, his words causing the countenance of his guard to stiffen. Why are we going to the Shadow Pavilion? The guard asked curiously. I'm here to gather information about a certain person. If the information is accurate, I'll kill him, Hua Xiaoyun coldly stated. Even Qin Wendian himself didn't expect that at the same time he wanted to kill Hua Xiaoyun, Qin Wendian also wanted to kill him. Qin Wendian arrived at the foot of the Pill Emperor Hall. At this moment, Qin Wendian was clad in white. Inclining his head, he stared at the heavily guarded Pill Emperor Hall, as well as the towering Pill Emperor Hall. A gust of wind blew past, causing Qin Wendian's white robes to flutter, tugging at the heartstrings of his heart. Beauty was one of them. However, when would he be able to see her? Within the Pill Emperor Hall, the silhouettes of 2 youths walked out. As they neared, their gazes inadvertently landed on Qin Wendian, and they couldn't help but be stunned. After which, a complicated expression flickered in their eyes. These 2 were none other than Jing Yu and Yan Qi, who had accompanied Luo He to Chu back then. To think that they would actually see a genius from a small country. To think that he had overestimated his own capabilities, chasing after her all the way to the Pill Emperor Hall. As to why their expressions were so complicated, it was because the current Mo Qingqing was so lofty that they could only look up to her in admiration. Not to mention, this minor character from the Chu country had such a look of disdain in his eyes. What an infatuated idiot. However, what could they do? The jackdaw was destined to never be in the same league as the Luan and Phoenix. Chapter 293. Jing Yu and Yan Qi walked to the front of Qin Wendian, scrutinizing him. Because of Qin Wendian's transformation, although they were facing Qin Wendian, they only felt that there was a slight resemblance, but they didn't dare to confirm it. And now, standing in front of Qin Wendian, scrutinizing him, they finally confirmed that this was indeed the young man from Chu. As men, Back then when they first met Imo Qingcheng, they already had a trace of admiration in their hearts. Hence, they felt a trace of enmity towards Qin Wendian, and remembered him even more clearly. As for Bai Fei, because she had never looked at Qin Wendian directly, her impression of Qin Wendian wasn't as deep as Jing Yu and Yan Qi. So it's really you. Hints of mockery could be seen flickering in their eyes. Qin Wendian naturally noticed them as well, but he only casually swept a glance at them before continuing his gaze ahead. Return to Chu, this isn't a place you should be at. Jing Yu calmly spoke, there was no insult, no contempt, he was merely trying to persuade Qin Wendian. If it was in the past, he might have insulted Qin Wendian. But now, in front of Imo Qingcheng, he could only raise his head in admiration. What qualifications did he have to humiliate Qin Wendian? Wasn't there some similarities between him and Qin Wendian? Qin Wendian didn't look at Jing Yu. In the world of cultivation, the hierarchy was extremely strict. Every level higher could cause one to collapse. And the Pill Emperor Hall stood at the pinnacle of the Moon continent, just like the Great Hall in front of them. The pressure it exerted was so great that it was difficult to even breathe. However, his gaze was extremely calm. No matter how high the Great Hall was, there would always be people who could trample it beneath their feet. Infatuation also depends on who you are looking at. If you know it's impossible, why place your hopes on her? The difference between you and her in the past is too great. Jing Yu continued. These words seemed to be directed at Qin Wendian, but also seemed to be a warning to himself. Upon seeing that Qin Wendian didn't seem to have heard Jing Yu's words, Yan Qi couldn't help but to laugh coldly. Walking towards Qin Wendian, he stared at him with disdain as he stated, the Pill Emperor Hall has a total of 99 flights of steps. Even the person standing at the bottom of the flight of steps is someone you have to look up to, yet you are still daydreaming here. Let me remind you again out of goodwill, scram. If not, if you dare to profane her, the consequences will be something you won't be able to bear. Qin Wendian turned around slowly and looked at Yan Qi. A golden bolt of lightning suddenly appeared in his eyes and pierced through Yan Qi's eyes. Boom! Yan Qi only felt his mind trembling violently. It was as though a primordial beast was brandishing its terrifying claws, wanting to tear him into pieces. Just a single gaze from Qin Wendian caused him to involuntarily retreat a few steps. His countenance paled as beads of perspiration appeared on his forehead. An overwhelming aura gushed forth from his body as he stared at Qin Wendian, only to see Qin Wendian shifting his gaze away. It was as though Qin Wendian wasn't looking at him at all. This caused Yan Qi's countenance to turn ashen. He had actually been frightened by a single gaze from Qin Wendian. How could this be? Jing Yu also noticed Yan Qi's abnormality. His eyes flickered, but at this moment, a sharp glint of light shot towards them from behind. Yan Qi and Jing Yu both turned their gazes over, only to see a scholarly and refined silhouette. Their eyes instantly flickered with a hint of respect. It was their senior brother Zhan Chen, ranked number 11 on the Heavenly Fate rankings. If there was someone in the Pill Emperor Hall who was worthy of Imo Qingcheng, it would definitely be their senior brother Zhan Chen. As Zhan Chen walked over, Jing Yu and Yan Qi hurriedly gave way to him. When they looked at Zhan Chen, a hint of respect flashed in their eyes as they greeted, senior brother. MHM, Zhan Chen lightly nodded his head. His gaze was fixated on Qin Wendian, and Qin Wendian was also looking at him. The killing intent of a character ranked number 11 on the Heavenly Fate rankings hadn't lessened in the slightest. Zhan Chen was somewhat bewildered, he didn't know why Qin Wendian would come to the Pill Emperor Hall. Back then when his secret was exposed by Qin Wendian, he had always harbored killing intent towards Qin Wendian. Now that Qin Wendian had come to the Pill Emperor Hall, how could he not be on guard? However, Zhan Chen wasn't afraid that Qin Wendian would reveal the truth. If Qin Wendian dared to say it, he would definitely deny it outright and spare no expense to kill Qin Wendian. After all, in the Pill Emperor Hall, he still had some prestige. This point, Qin Wendian should also understand. Hence, he wouldn't dare to reveal the truth so easily. The moment he did, between the two of them, one of them would have to die. And the one who would die would naturally be Qin Wendian. Although Qin Wendian stood there calmly, there were hints of wariness in his heart. This Zhang Chen might appear to be a scholarly person, but he was extremely good at disguising himself. Now that his strength was inferior to Zhang Chen's, he naturally had to be wary of this person. I just heard that you caused quite a commotion in the eastern domain, Zhang Chen laughed, as though he and Qin Wendian were good friends who hadn't seen each other for a very long time. Qin Wendian met his gaze calmly, but he didn't reply. At this moment, a terrifying aura gushed forth from Zhang Chen's body, as a fearsome sword intent bore down on Qin Wendian, wanting to penetrate through his body. But, what are you doing here in the Pale Emperor Hall? As the sound of Zhang Chen's voice faded, he took a step forward. This step instantly caused an immense pressure to weigh down on Qin Wendian, as though with a single thought, he would kill Qin Wendian on the spot. If you take another step forward, I can guarantee that you will regret it. Qin Wendian spoke in an indifferent tone, as light as the wind and as light as the clouds. His calm voice caused the hearts of Jing Yu and Yan Qi to tremble. Qin Wendian actually dared to speak such arrogant words to their senior brother Zhang Chen. Not only that, it was obvious that Zhang Chen was acquainted with Qin Wendian, and the two of them had a grudge. Zhang Chen halted his steps. Up till now, Qin Wendian hadn't revealed his secret, because even if he did, it wouldn't be of any use. On the contrary, it would only make Zhang Chen pay any price to kill him. However, if he forced Qin Wendian too far, there was no doubt that Qin Wendian would reveal his secret without hesitation. Although not many would believe it, it would be sufficient to heavily damage Zhang Chen's reputation. And once someone in the Pale Emperor Hall suspected him, his reputation would be severely damaged. Hence, unless he could kill Qin Wendian before Qin Wendian spoke, he wouldn't take the risk. Not only that, Bai Lui had also heard the conversation. Retracting his aura, Zhang Chen smiled, I forgot that you've already become the youngest fourth-ranked Grandmaster in the Moon Continent. Your attitude has indeed changed. However, divine inscriptions are still divine inscriptions. If I wanted to kill you, I wouldn't even need 5 breaths of time. Remember to be more careful in the future. Even though it was a threat, Zhang Chen still spoke with a smile on his face. Jing Yu and Yan Qi felt their hearts trembling. Qin Wendian was the youngest fourth-ranked Grandmaster in the Moon Continent. What was going on? A minor character from Chu back then, why did even their senior brother Zhang Chen suddenly feel trepidation towards him? I heard that there's a huge gap between the Yuanfu realm and Heavenly Dipper realm. I hope you can cross this gap as soon as possible, Qin Wendian calmly stated to Zhang Chen. If you stay at the Yuanfu realm for too long, I'm afraid that when you meet me in the future, you will have to avoid me. After speaking, Qin Wendian slowly turned and walked away with his back facing Zhang Chen. A terrifying sword intent abruptly gushed forth, yet Qin Wendian continued walking forward calmly, with his back facing Zhang Chen. He had no fear, or rather, disregard for Qin Wendian. A terrifying light flickered in Zhang Chen's eyes as the sword intent radiating from him gradually dissipated. His silhouette also gradually disappeared from sight. Jing Yu and Yan Qi, who were standing at the side, were dumbfounded as they watched this scene unfold. Qin Wendian actually dared to speak to their senior brother Zhang Chen in such a manner. That young man from a small country didn't even bother to look at them. Are you guys acquainted with him? Zhang Chen indifferently asked. Yes, he's from Chu and had a very good relationship with junior sister Qingcheng. Today, I'm afraid he's here because of her. Jing Yu didn't say that they were lovers, but Zhang Chen understood. The light in his eyes grew even sharper. Don't tell Qingcheng. Zhang Chen calmly stated. Mo Qingcheng had always been cultivating in the Pale Emperor Hall and didn't really care about the matters of the outside world. Zhang Chen hoped that she would never know of Qin Wendian's existence until he died. After Qin Wendian left the Pale Emperor Hall, he arrived at the branch of the Thousand Ju Alliance in the Moon Continent. Upon seeing the Thousand Ju token of Qin Wendian, someone immediately reported to him. Very quickly, the charming young lady personally came out to receive him. "Grandmaster Qin, you came so quickly." Upon seeing Qin Wendian, a warm smile appeared in her eyes. "I wish to seek help from the Thousand Ju Alliance." Qin Wendian smiled. The other party nodded. "You are a guest elder of the Fifth Ju Alliance. As long as you have the authority, the Thousand Ju Alliance will help you unconditionally." Qin Wendian nodded as he retrieved a list of items and passed it to the other party. "I need the items on this list. How many Yuan meteor stones do you need?" "I will pay for it." "Okay, leave it to me. After the matter is settled, I will order my men to send it to the White Deer Institute. You can then pay him the Yuan meteor stones." The young lady glanced at the items on the list before keeping them. "Okay, in addition, I still need to inquire about a certain person," Qin Wendian spoke as he moved his lips to the side of the young lady's ear, whispering in a low voice, "Hua Xiaoyun." A strange light flashed in the eyes of the young lady as she nodded her head. "Don't worry, the request of a guest elder of the Thousand Ju Alliance is absolutely confidential. I will handle this matter personally. Many thanks for your help. If there are any expenses incurred, I will bear them myself." Qin Wendian smiled. If he wanted to ask for help, he would have to bear the expenses himself. "No need, just provide the information and the Thousand Ju Alliance will bear the expenses." The young lady smiled. Qin Wendian didn't insist, he bade farewell and left the place. At the same time, Hua Xiaoyun, whom Qin Wendian had inquired about, appeared at the mysterious Shadow Tower in the Moon Continent. Within the Shadow Tower, the person sitting opposite to Hua Xiaoyun was flipping through a stack of documents. Since Qin Wendian came from a foreign land, it would be somewhat troublesome to investigate him. However, Hua Xiaoyun had provided them with a clue. "Chu. Sir, over here." The person sitting opposite to Hua Xiaoyun flipped through the documents as his eyes gradually brightened. "Qin Wendian hails from Chu. Qin Wendian hails from Chu." The last time he revealed his cultivation base was during the refinement grounds of divine inscriptions. At that time, he was only at the 3rd level of Yuanfu. Now, he might have already broken through to the 4th level of Yuanfu. He's a 4th-ranked Grandmaster and has a Heavenly Dipper sovereign protecting him. At the same time, he acquired 2 4th-ranked puppets and killed several 4th-ranked Grandmasters in the White Deer Institute. Not long ago, he also killed Leng Mao from the Leng clan using his divine inscriptions and puppets. The sinister-looking man sitting opposite to Hua Xiaoyun slowly explained, his words causing Hua Xiaoyun's countenance to sink as his countenance turned incredibly unsightly to behold. Coming from Chu, and having a Heavenly Dipper sovereign protecting him, there was no doubt about it. But now, he had already become a 4th-ranked Grandmaster, and even had a 4th-ranked puppet. "I want him dead," Hua Xiaoyun coldly stated. The sinister-looking man laughed, "Please wait a moment." After which, he left the room for a few moments, and when he returned, he passed a piece of paper to Hua Xiaoyun. "You can accept the mission, this is the remuneration you need. 10% up front, no refunds. After the mission is completed, you can pay the remaining 90%. Hua Xiaoyun glanced at the paper as his countenance stiffened. Is there a need to pay such a high price to kill a Yuanfu cultivator? Young Master Hua, you can do it yourself. The sinister-looking man laughed, causing Hua Xiaoyun's countenance to turn incredibly ugly. Now that his status in the Hua clan had fallen, if he directly sent people to kill Qin Wendian, the Hua clan would definitely not agree. After all, no matter what, Qin Wendian was Mo Qingqing's lover. Who knew what Mo Qingqing's attitude would be? Unless, of course, his elder brother Hua Taishu wanted Qin Wendian dead. I agree. Hua Xiaoyun gritted his teeth, as he retrieved a large amount of Yuan meteor stones from his interspatial ring. His heart ached in pain. If he killed Qin Wendian, he would have to expend all the money he had accumulated over the years. After Hua Xiaoyun left, a cold glint of light flashed in the eyes of the sinister-looking man as he laughed. I heard that Qin Wendian rejected the goodwill of the weaponsmith hall not long ago. If not for that, we wouldn't have dared to touch him. Chapter 294. The mission hall of the Shadow Tower was divided into 9 levels. If one wanted to enter the top level, they would need to have the appropriate authority. Because, other than the Shadow Tower's own power, many of the assassins were hired from outside. In other words, anyone could become an assassin of the Shadow Tower. The relationship between them and the Shadow Tower was purely a cooperative one. This was also the reason why the Shadow Tower was so powerful. Many people needed wealth, so they chose to become assassins to earn it. However, there was a flaw to this. Sometimes, the information of the mission would be leaked out. Although the possibility of this was small, it was still unavoidable. However, the Shadow Tower didn't seem to care. Since they dared to become an assassin, they naturally wouldn't be afraid of revenge. Naturally, the Shadow Tower had another rule. They wouldn't accept missions to kill the direct descendants of the transcendent powers. As for the other missions, they would accept them. The 5th level of the mission hall could only be accessed by 5-star assassins. This was a mission for those at the initial level of Heavenly Dipper. Those who could accept missions here were all extremely powerful characters. Today, there was an additional mission on the 5th floor of the mission hall, which was quite eye-catching. Qin Wentian, 19 years old, from Chu, cultivation base at the 3rd or 4th level of Yuanfu, a 4th-ranked grandmaster. Protected by a 2nd-level Heavenly Dipper female protector, as well as 2 4th-ranked puppets with combat prowess at the initial level of Heavenly Dipper. At the back of the mission, there was a portrait as well as the reward. This must be the youngest 4th-ranked grandmaster in the Moon continent. This is the first time I've seen someone at the Yuanfu realm worth so much. A person wearing a mask said with a faint smile. Most of the people who came here would not show their faces to others. This way, when accepting a mission, if they killed someone with a background, it would not spread out and they would not be hunted down by the background of the person who killed them. What kind of hatred does this person have? Why would he pay such a huge price to kill a genius grandmaster? Many of the assassins were bewildered, but they didn't care too much. They were here to see if there were any suitable missions for them to accept. I'll accept this mission. A silhouette walked up and tore down the mission sheet. He stared at the portrait of Qin Wentian as though he was looking at a huge fortune. Tian can the 4 of you do it? Someone immediately knew his code name upon seeing the insignia in the silhouette's hands. The assassin, Tian Can, was a group of 4 people, not just one. It was said that there were 4 master and disciples, a husband and wife with 2 disciples. They were all very ruthless and had killed many people. Killing someone with a cultivation base at most at the 4th level of Yuanfu? What's the big deal? This fortune is mine for sure. A look of disdain flashed in Tian Can's eyes. Behind him stood 3 people. 2 of them laughed out loud. Master, after this mission, we can buy a defensive armor for Master's wife. Yes, it's more than enough. At that time, I'll give each of you a 4th-ranked divine weapon. The hunchbacked figure grinned, as though he could already see the divine weapons in front of him. After all, a Yuanfu cultivator was different from a Heavenly Dipper sovereign. As long as he and his wife could delay the Heavenly Dipper sovereign and the puppet, his 2 disciples could easily kill Qin Wentian. This mission would be difficult for other assassins to complete alone, but with the 4 of them working together, it was easy. This time around, he would be able to earn a huge sum of money. He didn't know who would be so generous as to pay such a hefty price just to kill a grandmaster with limitless potential. Naturally, Qin Wentian didn't know that his name had already been written in the mission hall of the Shadow Pavilion. He also didn't know that the mission had already been accepted by someone else. After returning to the White Deer Institute, he quietly waited for news from the Thousand Jew Alliance while simultaneously cultivating one of the powerful innate techniques recorded in the ancient scroll of the Ascendant. Qin Wentian's will seeped into the ancient scroll, and an extremely shocking scene appeared before his eyes. A silhouette stood proudly in the air. About 100 meters away from him, there was a terrifying ancient mountain peak. The silhouette pointed a finger forward, and the tip of his finger seemed to be cast from gold. Instantly, the entire heavens and earth turned golden, as the entire space was enveloped by the mandate of gold. In the entire world, it was as though that finger was the only thing left in the world. Pointing at the mountain peak ahead, an endless amount of golden energy was gathered in that finger. The finger light streaked across and landed on the mountain peak. Cracking sounds rang out as the entire mountain peak was instantly turned into golden shards that scattered across the world. Heaven-breaking finger, cultivate the gold element ancient scroll, cultivate the indestructible golden body, then cultivate this innate technique, breaking the heavens with a single finger. This was the voice left behind by the innate technique, causing Qin Wendian to be extremely shocked. However, this voice also mentioned the gold element ancient scroll that he had abandoned. The more the other party mentioned it, the more suspicious Qin Wendian felt. I don't believe that if I don't cultivate the gold element ancient scroll, I won't be able to cultivate the heaven-breaking finger. A sharp glint of light flashed in Qin Wendian's eyes. This heaven-breaking finger was most probably a heaven-ranked innate technique. The stronger one's cultivation base was, the deeper their comprehension would be, and the more terrifying the might they could unleash. With a single finger of the gold element ancient scroll, an ancient mountain was shattered. The aura it exuded caused Qin Wendian's heart to tremble. This was definitely the most powerful innate technique he had ever seen in his entire life. The heaven-breaking finger didn't mention that one had to cultivate the mandate of gold. In that case, he could cultivate the mandate of demonic energy. The mandate of demonic energy was tyrannical and tyrannical. The might it could unleash was equally terrifying. As he thought of this, Qin Wendian closed his eyes and started to cultivate the tyrannical heaven-breaking finger art. After cultivating for a short period of time, Qin Wendian discovered that every time he activated the heaven-breaking finger art, the amount of astral energy he had to expend was as vast as the ocean. If he used his divine energy to unleash the heaven-breaking finger art, although the might of the attack would be stronger, it was unknown how much astral energy he would have to expend. This caused Qin Wendian to sigh in admiration. Cultivation truly required resources. If he didn't have enough Yuan meteor stones, he wouldn't even be able to cultivate this innate technique. Just think about it, he couldn't possibly exhaust the astral energy from the 9 heavenly layers after exhausting the astral energy in his body. If he did that, he would waste too much time. Without resources, it would be extremely difficult to cultivate. Hence, many ordinary people would choose to plunder and risk their lives. Qin Wendian cultivated for a short period of time before entering his dreamscape once again. In his dreamscape, he could imagine to his heart's content as he pleased. On the second day, the people from the Thousand Jew Alliance arrived and delivered the items he wanted. After Qin Wendian paid them for the items, they immediately left, not disturbing Qin Wendian's cultivation. Glancing at the items on the ground, a smile appeared on Qin Wendian's face. He could finally attempt to break through to the second level of the Fiend transformation art. Once he reached the second level of the Fiend transformation art, it would be much easier for him to cultivate the heaven-breaking finger art. For the next few days, a towering demonic chi could be sensed from the back mountain of the White Deer Institute. Many people turned their gazes in that direction as expressions of bewilderment could be seen on their faces. Why would the demonic chi be so intense? Could it be that Qin Wendian's astral soul contained a powerful demonic beast astral soul? Was he cultivating a powerful demonic beast cultivation art or innate technique? Although puzzled, no one disturbed Qin Wendian. Many people who were watching even saw the shadow of the demonic beast rise into the void and then gradually disappear. 3 days later, Qin Wendian's entire body was enveloped by a terrifying demonic chi. His entire person resembled a fearsome demonic beast. Even for the most powerful demonic beasts, they wouldn't be able to match the intensity of his demonic chi. Ah! A low roar emanated from the demonic aura. The demonic aura in the void suddenly converged into a vortex and rushed madly into Qin Wendian's body. Very soon, the demonic figure gradually appeared in their line of sight. However, within his body, there seemed to be a terrifying demonic beast's life force. That exuberant, surging vitality made people's hearts tremble. The fiend transformation art allowed the cultivator to transform into a human. The cultivator would be able to combine the strengths of both humans and demons into a single body. The body of a human would possess the exuberant life force of a demon, a powerful physique, a terrifying fleshly body, and a terrifying explosive strength. The unique characteristics of demons would be imparted onto the cultivator. At this moment, if there was someone else present, they would be able to clearly sense that the current Qin Wendian's vitality and the strength of his physique had already far surpassed those at the same level as him. If it was purely based on physique, without the use of astral energy or innate techniques, he would be able to easily crush those at the same level as him. His physique was at the level of a demonic beast. The second level of the fiend transformation art, completed. A smile appeared in Qin Wendian's eyes. Being able to cultivate the second level of the fiend transformation art in such a short period of time definitely had something to do with the terrifying bloodline power in his body. After completing the second level of the fiend transformation art, Qin Wendian didn't leave. Instead, he continued to cultivate the heaven-breaking finger while waiting for news from the Thousand Zhu Alliance regarding Hua Xiaoyun. In the blink of an eye, another 7 days passed. During these 7 days, the Lin clan had already given their reply. They had already reached a compromise, and their heavenly dipper sovereign, Elder Lin Mao, had already been killed. It wasn't worth it for them to offend Qin Wendian for the sake of a few people. Not only that, they also heard that Qin Wendian had already become a guest elder of the Thousand Zhu Alliance. The Lin clan didn't wish to offend Qin Wendian any further, and hence, they had no choice but to end this matter. As for Hua Xiaoyun, he couldn't wait any longer. He made a trip to the Shadow Tower, and upon hearing that an assassin had already accepted the mission to kill Qin Wendian, and that the assassin had already arrived at the eastern region of the Moon Continent to set up an ambush, Hua Xiaoyun also left the northern region of the Moon Continent. He wanted to see how Qin Wendian would die. What Hua Xiaoyun didn't know was that the moment he stepped into the eastern region of the Moon Continent, there were also people paying attention to him. Qin Wendian finally received news of Hua Xiaoyun's whereabouts. Not only that, the Thousand Zhu Alliance had also informed him that Hua Xiaoyun had actually arrived at the eastern region. This news caused Qin Wendian's eyes to flash with sharpness. This Hua Xiaoyun really came at the right time. How could he kill Hua Xiaoyun without the Hua clan knowing? Qin Wendian understood that with the status of the Hua clan, their intelligence network would definitely be extremely powerful. If he directly killed Hua Xiaoyun, it would be easily discovered. If he killed a descendant of the Hua clan, it would be extremely difficult for him to remain in the Moon Continent any longer. But no matter what, Hua Xiaoyun had to die. Even if he had no other choice, he would still have to kill Hua Xiaoyun if he had to leave the Moon Continent. Qin Wendian walked out of the White Deer Institute. He didn't bid farewell to anyone, nor did he tell Bai Lui that he wanted to kill Hua Xiaoyun. He didn't want anyone else to be implicated in this matter. Chapter 295. Qin Wendian went alone to look for Hua Xiaoyun because the Thousand Zhu Alliance told him that Hua Xiaoyun only had an initial Heavenly Dipper sovereign as his bodyguard. If that was the case, his puppet would still be able to stall for time. As for Hua Xiaoyun, Qin Wendian could deal with him himself. Naturally, Qin Wendian didn't know that the reason why Hua Xiaoyun came to the eastern region of the Moon Continent was because of the assassin who wanted to assassinate him. Hua Xiaoyun also didn't know that the moment he stepped into the eastern region, he had already been targeted. Not only that, the assassin had already informed Qin Wendian. Both of them wanted the other to die, yet they didn't know the danger they were facing. When Qin Wendian stepped out of the White Deer Institute, there were already people watching him. On the streets, a horse carriage was slowly moving forward. The driver of the carriage looked extremely ordinary, and his head was lowered as he slowly drove the horse carriage forward. Qin Wendian didn't even notice the existence of a horse carriage. In the streets of the Moon Continent, it was simply too ordinary. Not only that, the carriage wasn't eye-catching at all. It was moving slowly, far away from him, and wouldn't attract any attention. But at this moment, beside the driver of the horse carriage, a silhouette could be seen. This silhouette had an ancient sword strapped to his back and wore a silver-white mask, revealing only a pair of eyes. The driver of the horse carriage acted as though he didn't see the silhouette, and continued to drive the horse forward. However, the silhouette also quietly followed behind, neither hurrying nor slow, maintaining the exact same posture as the driver. "This is my mission." The coachman suddenly raised his head. A sharp gaze flashed across his eyes as he glanced at the silver-masked figure with the ancient sword on his back. His voice was directly transmitted into the other party's ears. Then, he lowered his head and continued driving. "I know." The silhouette lightly nodded. "If you know, then do what you need to do." The driver of the horse coldly spoke. As a colleague, he quickly recalled who the silhouette was. Silver Snake was the same as him, an assassin hired by the Shadow Pavilion. He had the same level of authority as the driver of the Hall of Missions, and could accept missions on the 5th level of the Hall of Missions. Silver Snake's cultivation base was only at the peak of Yuanfu. Originally, he didn't have the qualifications to have such a high level of authority. However, he had once completed an extremely shocking mission and successfully assassinated a heaven-shaking character. "I won't ask for your reward," she said calmly. "But you have to listen to me. Don't be in a hurry to act. If we follow them for too long, they'll notice us sooner or later. When it's about time, we can make our move," the driver said calmly. "No, wait. Wait for him to find your helper. That way, you'll have one more helper," the Silver Snake continued as if it had seen through everything. "Helpers?" The coachman's voice was a little hoarse. "His helpers were all in the carriage. Don't worry, I've already investigated clearly. If I'm not mistaken, your employer has arrived. Right now, he's going to find your employer. When they make their move, you can make your move. That will be the best time. As for the employer's life or death, what does that have to do with you?" Shi's voice caused a chill to run down the coachman's spine. Although the Shadow Tower wouldn't hide the mission details, they would still keep the identity of the employer a secret. How did Shi know who the employer was? Not only that, Shi seemed to want to make use of the employer as well, so that he would have a better chance of completing the mission. If that was the case, could it be that Shi had a personal grudge with this 4th-ranked Grandmaster? Who was this Shi? However, he wasn't worried that Shi would lie to him. Silver Snake's cultivation base was at the 9th level of Yuanfu. If he wanted to kill Shi, it wouldn't be too much of a problem. In an inn located in the eastern region of the Moon Continent, Hua Xiaoyun was currently enjoying his wine. At this moment, a joyous smile could be seen on his face. The revenge for his severed arm should be coming soon. The assassins of the Shadow Tower would definitely not disappoint him. Raising the wine cup in his hand, Hua Xiaoyun drained it in one gulp. A cold light flickered in his eyes as he stared at the person in front of him. Only to see that in front of him, there was a young lady clad in a red dress. She was extremely beautiful, exuding an aura of transcendence. With a single glance, one could tell that she was the daughter of a major power, exuding an aura of elegance. This young lady seemed to have sensed his gaze, as she inclined her head and glanced at Hua Xiaoyun. Her gaze caused Hua Xiaoyun's heart to pound as he silently mused, "What a beauty." The young lady's snow-white skin was as soft as snow, as though it could be broken by the slightest breeze. With a single glance, one could tell that this young lady's figure was exceedingly exquisite. Her red lips further enhanced her beauty. Which clan does this young lady belong to in the Moon Continent? Hua Xiaoyun mused. If there was such a young lady in the Moon Continent, she definitely wouldn't be a nameless nobody. Not only that, based on her demeanor, she seemed to be from a major power. Although Hua Xiaoyun was a silk pants, he still had a discerning eye. When the young lady saw Hua Xiaoyun staring at her, an expression of unhappiness involuntarily flickered in her eyes. Her slight frown caused Hua Xiaoyun's heart to palpitate with excitement. "My name is Hua Xiaoyun, how should I address you?" Hua Xiaoyun clasped his hands in greeting, only to discover that he only had one arm left. His heart couldn't help but ache, and he could only smile and nod his head to the young lady. The young lady unhappily stared at him as she coldly stated, "The second generation of the Hua clan has already lost an arm, yet you're still so dishonest." Hua Xiaoyun's countenance stiffened as his countenance turned incredibly ugly. "I'm just asking nicely, yet Miss dares to insult me." Hua Xiaoyun coldly stated, "I wonder which clan's young lady dares to be so arrogant." "Shu Wanyu." The young lady replied, causing Hua Xiaoyun's countenance to stiffen as a name appeared in his mind. He involuntarily laughed, "Oh, so it's Miss Shu. I heard that Miss Shu is about to be engaged to Brother Yang. Congratulations." Shu Wanyu was the golden daughter of one of the major clans in the eastern region of the Moon continent, the Shu clan. Regardless of beauty or talent, she was extremely outstanding. A few days ago, the Star-Seizing Manor wanted to find a partner for Yang Fan, and Yang Fan had fallen in love with Shu Wanyu. The Star-Seizing Manor personally proposed to the Shu clan, and they were naturally overjoyed. The heavens chosen of the Star-Seizing Manor, Yang Fan, to the Shu clan, was undoubtedly someone of a higher status than them. Naturally, Shu Wanyu herself was also extraordinary. She had already stepped into the 8th level of Yuan Fu at the tender age of 21, which was also an extremely outstanding achievement. Shu Wanyu continued to ignore Hua Xiaoyun. Hua Xiaoyun had an awkward expression on his face, but he was extremely unhappy in his heart. Now that his status in the Hua clan had dropped, even Yang Fan's fiancée was in front of him, he had to admit that he was inferior. Especially when he saw how Shu Wanyu looked down on him, he wanted nothing more than to trample on her mercilessly. Sadly, he wouldn't have such an opportunity, and could only fantasize about it in his heart. At this moment, outside of the inn, a silhouette clad in long robes was leisurely strolling about, attracting the attention of many in the crowd. Because this silhouette didn't seem to exude any aura of life. His countenance seemed to have a metallic sheen to it, and his eyes were as sharp as swords, yet they didn't seem to belong to a human. It was as though he was a puppet. There seems to be one there as well. A person walked to the side of a puppet, and involuntarily turned his head to look in that direction. There was another puppet there, but strangely, it seemed as though someone had intentionally released this puppet. And in a wine shop opposite of Hua Xiaoyun's inn, a silhouette could be seen with his head lowered. He wore a conical bamboo hat, and no one noticed that in the center of his brows, there was a glimmer of light, as though there was a third eye there. This person was none other than Qin Wentian. After he obtained the location of Hua Xiaoyun's inn, he immediately came here. That third eye of his was currently glowing with a terrifying light, and abruptly, his perception expanded frenziedly. Not a single person's movements could be hidden from his eyes. On the streets, silhouettes of people could be seen moving about, and from afar, a horse carriage could be seen leisurely making its way over. Beside the coachman, there was a masked man with an ancient sword strapped to his back. "It's them." Qin Wentian faintly felt that something was amiss. It was as though he had seen this horse carriage before, but he didn't pay any attention to it. And what made Qin Wentian even more puzzled was that he couldn't see through the coachman's cultivation base. If he couldn't see through it, it meant that the coachman was a heavenly dipper sovereign. As for the masked man beside the coachman, his cultivation base was at the 9th level of Yuan Fu. Within the carriage, there were 3 other people, and their eyes flickered with a terrifying light. Something was wrong. Qin Wentian instantly felt that something was amiss. It seemed as though this horse carriage was following him here. Bzzz. Abruptly, a silhouette appeared beside Qin Wentian. It was none other than Qing, and the instant she appeared, many in the inn cast their gazes over as expressions of shock and amazement flickered on their faces. The young woman quietly sat beside Qin Wentian, and it was as though she could sense that there were people following Qin Wentian. She wasn't good with words, so she didn't say anything. She knew that at this moment, she couldn't be too far away from Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's perception once again reached the inn Hua Xiaoyun was in. He saw Hua Xiaoyun, as well as his heavenly dipper sovereign protector. He even saw Hua Xiaoyun speaking to an extremely beautiful young woman, but that young woman couldn't be bothered to respond to him. Michem. The protector behind Hua Xiaoyun furrowed his brows. He suddenly had a strange feeling, as though someone was spying on him. Yet, he had no idea where this feeling came from. Could it be that someone extremely powerful was paying attention to him in the shadows? Hua Xiaoyun was oblivious to this. He was currently staring at Shu Ruanyu, his eyes narrowed, and a lustful light flickered within them. It was as though he was thinking of something filthy. Boom! Abruptly, a white bolt of lightning blasted into his mind. Hua Xiaoyun's mind trembled violently as he groaned in agony, his countenance instantly turning pale. Young master! The protector seemed to have sensed something. Hua Xiaoyun roared in a low voice as he felt a terrifying bolt of lightning blasting into his mind. It was as though there was a terrifying primordial beast roaring at him, pressing down on his mind. Boom, boom, boom. Hua Xiaoyun's body was instantly drenched in sweat, and his countenance was as pale as a sheet of paper as he desperately tried to defend his consciousness. Junior was too rash, I don't know which senior I've offended. Hua Xiaoyun roared in a low voice as he felt a sense of impending death enveloping him. This kind of consciousness attack was definitely from a heavenly dipper sovereign. Chapter 296. The people in the inn all had expressions of shock on their faces when they heard Hua Xiaoyun's roar. Even the eyes of the guard flickered with a cold light. It seemed like his premonition was right. There was indeed someone spying on them, and that person actually launched an attack on Hua Xiaoyun's consciousness. However, there wasn't any abnormality in the inn. In other words, the attacker wasn't even in the inn, yet he was able to attack the consciousness of others through the air. Such a method caused him to feel extreme trepidation. Shu Ruanyu's beautiful eyes flickered with astonishment as she stared at the attacker in the inn. This attack definitely didn't originate from the inn. Arg! Hua Xiaoyun screamed in agony as he clutched his head with both hands. An expression of extreme agony could be seen on his face as the lightning-fast attack grew more and more intense. In his sea of consciousness, the silhouette of a gigantic primordial beast appeared, wreaking havoc in his sea of consciousness, containing a terrifying mandate of astral energy, wanting to destroy his will. Hua Xiaoyun's current strength had already improved compared to the time he was in Chu. However, because of the injuries he suffered back then, he wasn't able to reflect on his mistakes and change for the better. Instead, he could only spend his days in depression, thinking about revenge. His improvement was limited, and he had only advanced from the 4th level of Yuanfu to the 5th level. As for the mandate of astral energy he had comprehended, it was still at the initial boundary. And precisely because of his weak will, it was extremely difficult for him to endure such an attack. His opponent's consciousness attack seemed to contain a tyrannical mandate, causing him to feel as though his brain was about to explode. Let's go. His guard pulled Hua Xiaoyun's body as he soared up into the air. With a deafening boom, the roof of the inn shattered. Hua Xiaoyun's guard prepared to bring Hua Xiaoyun away from this place. If this continued, Hua Xiaoyun's consciousness would be directly erased, turning him into an idiot. There was no difference between that and death. Shu Ruanyu stared at the air, only to see her silhouette flickering as she soared up into the air as well. Who exactly was so powerful to be able to launch a consciousness attack from such a distance? At the instant Hua Xiaoyun's guard rushed out of the inn, an ice-cold saber light descended from the skies. The sharpness of the saber light caused the hearts of those who saw it to tremble. This figure was clad in black robes. However, the metallic eyes of the figure didn't seem to belong to a human, as they were filled with a bone-chilling coldness. Who is it? Hua Xiaoyun's bodyguard howled in rage as he slammed his palms out 9 times consecutively, causing a raging wind to kick up. The edge of his saber slashed downwards, following the flow of the raging wind, slicing through the body of his opponent. Buzz! The coldness in the air was as intense as ever. Both of the legs of Hua Xiaoyun's protectors swept out with a similarly cold glint. Hua Xiaoyun's protector turned his gaze over, only to see that the legs of Hua Xiaoyun's protector were also covered with a terrifying blade edge. His countenance stiffened as he frenziedly evaded the attacks. At the same time, with a howl of rage, his astral nova manifested, transforming into a cold saber that slashed out. A thunderous rumbling sound echoed out as Hua Xiaoyun's protector retreated with great speed. Yet, his hand was still tightly gripping onto Hua Xiaoyun, refusing to let go. At this moment, Hua Xiaoyun clutched his head as an expression of extreme agony appeared on his face. The will of Hua Xiaoyun's protector's consciousness attack seemed as though it would never stop. This caused the protector's countenance to turn ashen. There was still one more person hiding in the shadows. But given the strength of his opponent, why didn't he attack directly? At this moment, Qin Wendian was also extremely depressed. His head was still lowered as he frenziedly attacked Hua Xiaoyun. His third eye flickered with a terrifying cold light, yet at the same time as he attacked, he could also sense that the coachman, as well as the passengers on the carriage, were closing in on him. Qin Wendian was truly here because of him. With two fourth-ranked puppets, in addition to his long-ranged attacks, killing Hua Xiaoyun should have been a surefire success. In fact, if his movements were fast enough, he could retreat immediately after killing Hua Xiaoyun. But who would have thought that he would actually be the target of someone else's attention? Die! Qin Wendian's will frenziedly gushed out from his third eye, gushing into Hua Xiaoyun's sea of consciousness. Hua Xiaoyun screamed in agony, howling in agony. It wouldn't be long before he couldn't hold on any longer. Even if he didn't directly attack Qin Wendian, he would still die to this long-range attack. The coachman was already not far away from him. If it wasn't for Qin Wendian's terrifying perception, he wouldn't even know how he died. Qin Wendian's body was still hunched over, and his disguise was perfect. Swishing sounds rang out. Qin Wendian's body tensed up as his countenance paled. He knew that he no longer had a chance. His opponent only needed to give him a few more breaths of time before Hua Xiaoyun would be unable to hold on any longer. What a pity, at the same time he acted against Hua Xiaoyun, these people also acted against him. Not only that, the moment they acted, they directly restricted his movements. It was as though someone had bound his body. This was an extremely powerful will of mandates, binding him. Qin Wendian inclined his head, his third eye was already closed. A cold light flickered in his eyes, only to see the coachman's silhouette flickering as he dashed towards Qin Wendian with extreme speed. An intense killing intent locked onto Qin Wendian. Killing intent, an extremely intense killing intent. Qing-er's silhouette flickered as she instantly appeared in front of Qin Wendian. Qing-er's body emanated a mysterious intent, and in an instant, the binding force on Qin Wendian disappeared. Qing-er waved her palms as a lotus bloomed, shooting towards the coachman. At the same time, her silhouette flickered, bringing Qin Wendian along with her as she soared into the skies. Mandate of space, she actually comprehended such a high level of mandate at such a young age. The coachman stared at the skies as an expression of shock appeared on his face. The will of space was an extremely tyrannical willpower. Perhaps the first and second realms were not strong enough, but the further one progressed, the more powerful the will of space would be. He had once witnessed with his own eyes how terrifying the strength of an expert who had comprehended the will of space was. This beautiful young lady actually comprehended the mandate of space, forming her own dimension and blocking his mandate of space. However, he was still an assassin after all. When Qing-er and Qin Wendian soared into the skies, he followed suit. At the same time, 3 other silhouettes soared into the skies as well, all of them rushing towards Qing-er and Qin Wendian. The commotion here instantly attracted the attention of those in the inn. Hua Xiaoyun heaved a long sigh of relief, his countenance was deathly pale, and his entire body was drenched in sweat. At this moment, he suddenly sensed a battle taking place beside him. With just a single glance, his eyes froze. It's Qin Wendian. Hua Xiaoyun's heart pounded violently. He naturally saw Qing-er as well. She must have been the one who launched the attack against him earlier. Hua Xiaoyun's countenance contorted. He didn't expect that Qin Wendian would actually be here to kill him. Kill him now. Hua Xiaoyun howled in a frenzy. At this moment, he naturally understood that the person who attacked Qin Wendian was an assassin from the Shadow Pagoda, hired by him. A bunch of trash, they actually allowed Qin Wendian to kill his way here. Hua Xiaoyun howled in his heart. The assassin he hired actually allowed the target he wanted to kill his way here. How despicable. Qin Wendian's gaze abruptly turned incomparably cold. A long vine abruptly whizzed towards him, coiling around his body. Qing blocked in front of him, slashing out with a beam of golden light. In an instant, the vine was severed, but in the next instant, more and more vines grew out. Not only that, the number of vines increased as they frenziedly sped towards Qing and Qin Wendian. Qing furrowed her brows. The opponent's attacks were extremely troublesome. She wouldn't have any problems dealing with them, but Qin Wendian would definitely be in trouble. Qi. Abruptly, a demonic snake appeared behind Qin Wendian. It was the Heavenly Dipper sovereign madam who had made her move. A raging wind gusted by as a golden-armored puppet appeared in Hua Xiaoyun's vision. This golden-armored puppet was originally prepared to deal a fatal blow to Hua Xiaoyun, but now, it had no choice but to summon it back. The madam and the golden-armored puppet clashed against each other. However, a gigantic python howled in rage as it lunged towards Qin Wendian. There were 4 Heavenly Dipper sovereigns in the Heavenly Crippling sect. According to their estimations, 2 Heavenly Dipper sovereigns would be able to easily delay Qing and the 2 golden-armored puppets. The disciples of the Heavenly Crippling sect only needed to prepare for the worst. However, Qing's strength had far exceeded their expectations. She had already grasped the mandate of space, and was able to prevent the mandate of space from affecting her and Qin Wendian. If not, the mandate of space would have been able to restrain Qing and Qin Wendian. As long as Qing was delayed for a short moment, killing Qin Wendian would be an easy task. Come here. The gigantic python opened its jaws, causing the skies to change color. Qin Wendian felt his body being dragged uncontrollably towards the python's mouth. Although there were some surprises, with Hua Xiaoyun's bodyguards helping them to delay one of the golden-armored puppets, it wouldn't be too difficult for them to kill Qin Wendian. Qing's beautiful countenance changed when she saw this scene. After which, a golden lotus blossomed beneath her feet, expanding outwards in an instant, enveloping the entire space within a layer of mystical energy. Let me deal with them. Qing softly spoke. The golden lotus enveloped the entire space as she held on to Qin Wendian's arm and flew into the air. The golden-armored puppet will assist you. Qin Wendian spoke in a low voice. Qing cast a glance at Qin Wendian as she replied in a low voice, I'll be fine. Her voice was as cold as ever, and as the sound of her voice faded, she sent Qin Wendian out of the golden lotus. After Qin Wendian exited, the blooming golden lotus closed up, exuding an indescribable beauty. The golden lotus was translucent, and one could clearly see everything within it. The gigantic and beautiful lotus enveloped the 2 Heavenly Dipper sovereigns within. The mandate of space, Qing's talent is so high. Qin Wendian murmured. However, he couldn't care less about that because the other 2 in the carriage had already arrived. An overwhelming killing intent bore down on him, akin to the aura of the Grim Reaper. Rays of light flashed as a fearsome long spear appeared in Qin Wendian's hands, while a blood-colored stone tablet floated in the air. The 2 newcomers weren't weak. One was at the 8th level of Yuanfu, while the other was at the 6th level. Both of them gave Qin Wendian an intense sense of threat. Qin Wendian, you're dead for sure. A malevolent expression appeared on Hua Xiaoyun's face. Qin Wendian wouldn't be able to escape even if he had wings. Hua Xiaoyun's protector was still engaged in battle with the bladed puppet. He could break away from the puppet and kill Qin Wendian, but he didn't dare to do so. If he killed Qin Wendian, the puppet would kill Hua Xiaoyun. To him, Hua Xiaoyun's life was what he needed to protect. Is he Qin Wentian? Shu Ruanyu coldly asked Hua Xiaoyun. Her fiery red skirt fluttered in the wind as she stared in the direction of Qin Wentian, her beautiful eyes flashing with a cold intent. Zhu Sha was her uncle. According to Yang Fan, Zhu Sha had died in the hands of the youngest fourth-ranked grandmaster in the Moon Continent during the refinement grounds of divine inscriptions. Yes, he's Qin Wentian. Does Miss Shu have a grudge against him? Hua Xiaoyun coldly laughed, only to see Shu Ruanyu coldly glancing at him. The young master of the Hua clan is truly trash. He's useless, yet he actually hired an assassin. You. The smile on Hua Xiaoyun's face froze, as his countenance turned incredibly ugly. Chapter 297. There were 2 Heavenly Dipper sovereigns and 2 Yuanfu cultivators from the Heavenly Cripple sect. At this moment, these 2 Yuanfu disciples stood on the left and right of Qin Wentian. 4th rank divine weapon. That 8th level Yuanfu disciple stared at the long spear in Qin Wentian's hands. Qin Wentian was too generous. The 4 of them had been assassins for many years, and the vast majority of the resources they earned were all spent on their cultivation. To them, a 4th-ranked divine weapon was a luxury, let alone a 4th-ranked puppet. However, after completing this mission, they would have won. Gravity. The mandate of the 8th level Yuanfu cultivator gushed forth. The mandate he had comprehended was the mandate of Great Earth, and the first level of the mandate of Great Earth was the mandate of gravity. Not only that, his mandate of Great Earth had already reached the transformation boundary. In an instant, Qin Wentian felt his entire body becoming extremely heavy, and he wasn't used to it. A terrifying demonic qi permeated the air as the power of his bloodline thrummed within his body. He wanted to use the power of his bloodline to compensate for the heaviness he felt. Boom! That 8th level Yuanfu cultivator moved as a long spear appeared in his hands. The spear was fast and heavy, causing the hearts of those who saw it to pound. If this spear landed on their bodies, even if they didn't die, they would be heavily injured. The long spear in his hands stabbed out explosively. Although he wasn't used to the heaviness of the spear, Qin Wentian's arm was still extremely stable. Black light flashed as a black dragon lunged out. The long spear collided with the spear, causing a thunderous boom to echo out. Qin Wentian only felt his internal organs trembling as the heaviness of the spear was transmitted into his body, causing him to groan in agony. The strength of an 8th level Yuanfu cultivator and a 4th level Yuanfu cultivator were on a completely different level. If it weren't for his tyrannical physique, he would have been heavily injured in a single strike. 4th-ranked divine weapons are so troublesome to forge. Qin Wentian silently cursed in his heart, as he frenziedly channeled his astral energy into the long spear, forming a connection with the divine inscriptions within. The 4th-ranked divine inscriptions within the spear weren't inscribed by him, and hence, in order to activate them, he would need an immense amount of astral energy to unleash a 4th-ranked attack. And this was under the condition that his senses were so strong that he could clearly sense the intricacies of the divine inscriptions. But in a battle, his opponents wouldn't give him too much time. After the 8th level Yuanfu cultivator unleashed his first strike, the second spear strike already arrived. This spear strike was even more ferocious than the first. Earth Wave. His spear was akin to a dragon, exploding forth as a terrifying wave of pressure gushed forth. His opponent's astral soul was released. It was actually a heavenly earth-type astral soul, causing his entire body to be enveloped in a layer of heaviness. Qin Wentian sliced open the skin on his finger, abruptly stabbing it into the air. Instantly, the Yellow Springs monument manifested, slamming towards his opponent, blocking the great earth ripple. With the Yellow Springs monument manifested, the other 6th level Yuanfu cultivator no longer had anything to fear. He instantly acted. Like a phantom, a terrifying ghost-like claw slashed out towards Qin Wentian's throat, giving off an eerie feeling. The earth wave and the Yellow Springs monument collided, yet Qin Wentian abruptly turned his gaze over. His ice-cold eyes swept over, colliding with his opponent's eyes. In an instant, the two of them stared at each other, as though the power of their wills intersected in the air, causing Qin Wentian's heart to tremble. His opponent could also use his eyes to attack. The ghost-like claw closed in, its 5 fingers gleaming with a black light as it grabbed towards Qin Wentian's neck. However, at this moment, a terrifying demonic qi gushed forth from Qin Wentian. The demonic bloodline of the supreme primordial demonic beasts in his body erupted forth, permeating the entire space. Sleep. Qin Wentian's mandate was unleashed, causing the eyes of his opponent to narrow as he felt a sense of drowsiness. The ghost-like claw swept past Qin Wentian's throat, only to discover that Qin Wentian's arm was actually covered in a layer of demonic scales, incomparably tough. Voila! The ghost-like claw slashed out, shattering the scales, causing fresh blood to flow. However, Qin Wentian's black spear pierced out in a straight line, forcing his opponent to retreat with explosive speed. But how could he make it in time? Executing the Garuda movement technique, Qin Wentian manifested a pair of Garuda wings on his back. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as the long spear pierced through his opponent's throat. This defense. Shu Wanyu, who was watching from afar, felt her heart trembling in fear. Qin Wentian's arm was actually covered in demonic scales, his defensive prowess was terrifying to the extreme. It was as though the Yellow Springs Monument had eyes of its own, frenziedly clashing against the opponent at the 8th level of Yuanfu, giving Qin Wentian enough time to kill his opponent. Junior brother. With a howl of rage, Qin Wentian only felt his back trembling violently as his countenance paled. He spun around and spat out a mouthful of fresh blood onto the Yellow Springs Monument. Instantly, the blood qi emanating from the Yellow Springs Monument grew even stronger, unceasingly rumbling sounds echoed out, causing his opponent to be in the same state of discomfort as him. Qin Wentian was restricted by gravity, while his opponent's heart and blood were still beating. The aura exuded by the black spear grew more and more terrifying. Earlier, when Qin Wentian's spear pierced through his opponent's throat, he didn't activate the divine inscriptions within. If he wanted to activate the 4th-ranked divine inscriptions, he would need to absorb a terrifying amount of astral energy. If it was a heavenly dipper sovereign, they would be able to do so in an instant, but his cultivation base was too low. I want you to die. The glow of his opponent's astral souls grew brighter and brighter, as a layer of earth-type armor materialized around his body. The killing intent in the eyes of the 8th-level Yuanfu cultivator was terrifying to behold. His body moved once more, and Qin Wentian pointed out with his finger, causing the Yellow Springs Monument to advance madly, while he himself retreated backwards. At this moment, his opponent allowed the Yellow Springs Monument to tremble as much as he wanted. The Earth-type armor seemed to be able to reduce the impact of the tremors. Puchi. The long spear was as fast as lightning, carrying with it a terrifying might. Qin Wentian's speed was greatly affected by the 8-fold gravitational force, and there was no way for him to evade. Qin Wentian's eyes flickered with a cold light. He folded his wings as demonic qi towered up the skies, enveloping his entire body within. Peng, the terrifying shockwaves instantly destroyed the demonic qi. The long spear pierced straight into the wings, and a malevolent expression could be seen on Qin Wentian's face. The long spear pierced forwards, causing piercing sounds to ring out unceasingly, wanting to take Qin Wentian's life. Break for me. With a howl of rage, his wings ruptured as the demonic qi dissipated. Qin Wentian's silhouette appeared once more as the long spear pierced through his left chest, almost piercing through his heart. However, Qin Wentian's eyes flickered with a terrifying killing intent. At the instant his wings ruptured, the long spear had already left Qin Wentian's hands as a terrifying black light engulfed the heavens and earth. The terrifying might contained within the spear was simply too terrifying, as it shot straight towards his opponent's throat. That person retreated by reflex. With a thunderous boom, the Yellow Springs Monument directly imprinted itself on his back, causing his countenance to turn deathly pale. A beam of black light flashed, and with a light sound, the long spear pierced into the center of his brows. A terrifying sinister aura erupted forth as his body directly exploded. He died. Qin Wendian pulled the long spear out from his chest, his robes stained red with fresh blood. Coughing a few times, Qin Wendian's eyes were as cold as ice. That fellow doesn't care about his life. Shu Wanyu was somewhat taken aback by Qin Wendian's ruthlessness during battle. A 4th-level Yuanfu cultivator actually managed to kill an 8th and 6th-level Yuanfu cultivator. Although he had borrowed the power of a 4th-ranked divine weapon, as well as the power of the Yellow Springs Monument, Qin Wendian's ruthlessness had also been displayed. If that long spear had been just a little bit more accurate, that person would have already died. Naturally, she could also tell that even without the aid of the divine weapon and the Yellow Springs Monument, Qin Wendian's combat prowess was already extremely terrifying. His combat prowess far exceeded his cultivation base. She was thinking that even without the aid of the divine weapon, Qin Wendian would still be able to kill someone at the 6th level of Yuanfu. However, the astral energy in his body had been completely depleted when he used that spear of darkness. After all, his cultivation base was only at the 4th level of Yuanfu. Go and kill him. Over at Hua Xiaoyun's side, his protectors stood by his side. There were a few puppets guarding him, one of them was a 4th-ranked puppet while the rest were all 3rd-ranked puppets. Young master, your safety is of utmost importance, the protector indifferently stated. If you can't even deal with a few puppets, what's the point of keeping you around? Hua Xiaoyun unhappily replied. Young master, I can easily deal with the 3rd-ranked puppets, but they are only watching you from afar. That 4th-ranked puppet is much more valuable compared to a 4th-ranked divine weapon, and it's extremely difficult to forge. The divine imprints inscribed within are all 4th-ranked attack-type divine imprints, equivalent to the innate techniques of Heavenly Dipper sovereigns. Other than the fact that it's not as agile as a human, it doesn't have much of a disadvantage. If it wasn't for the sake of protecting young master, I would naturally have a way to deal with it, but, the protector didn't continue his sentence, causing Hua Xiaoyun's countenance to turn even more unsightly. In the end, was he hinting that he was useless? Let me help you deal with these 3rd-ranked puppets. A voice drifted over, as a masked silhouette dashed towards the 3rd-ranked puppets. He unsheathed his sword, and as the sword descended, a cold light flashed, incomparably sharp to the extreme. One of the 3rd-ranked puppets lifted its arms to defend, only to see the sword gleaming with an eerie light. Fast, fast to the extreme. A crisp sound rang out as the puppet was directly sliced into two. What a terrifying sword. The protector's countenance stiffened, he didn't know where this masked silhouette came from. Qin Wendian's countenance stiffened. This 3rd-ranked puppet was ultimately not as powerful as the golden-armored puppets he had obtained from the refinement grounds. Regardless of attack or defense, they were all inferior. This assassin seemed to have been with the coachman earlier. Who would have thought that he would be so powerful? You're dead for sure. Shu Wanyu walked forwards, arriving beside Qin Wendian. Evidently, he's here for you. Initially, he wanted to leave you to the 4 assassins, but who would have thought that your combat prowess would be so impressive? After he deals with the puppets, he would definitely come after you. Those puppets should be your final trump card, right? I don't think we're acquainted with each other, right? Qin Wendian stared at the red-robed maiden in front of him. This maiden's silhouette was extremely beautiful, yet he didn't seem to recognize her at all. It's enough that I know you. Since you are going to die sooner or later, why don't you die in my hands? Shu Wanyu's astral soul flickered, as the shadow of flames flickered. Stellar martial cultivators were used to releasing their 3rd astral soul during combat, because their 3rd astral soul was the most powerful. Shu Wanyu's 3rd astral soul originated from the 4th heavenly layer, and was filled with a violent fiery aura. Are you so confident that you can defeat me? Qin Wendian's eyes flickered with a cold light, as his demonic qi intensified. I'm afraid you don't have much astral energy left in you, right? It's not even enough for you to activate the strongest attack of your 4th-ranked divine weapon. Shu Wanyu faintly spoke, her countenance filled with arrogance. Since they met, she might as well avenge her uncle. Chapter 298. Not only that, with your injuries, even if your recovery speed is astonishing, are you not affected at all? Shu Wanyu turned her gaze onto Qin Wentian's chest. If that spear had been a little more accurate, or if Qin Wentian's speed had been a little slower, he would have already died. However, Qin Wentian's recovery speed was truly impressive. The aura of his bloodline circulated within his body, preventing his blood from flowing out. Qin Wentian glanced at the fourth-rank divine weapon in his hands. With his current strength, using a fourth-rank divine weapon was indeed a little too forceful. With a slight intention of his will, Qin Wentian kept the long spear, causing Shu Wanyu to be stunned. Shu Wanyu stared at Qin Wentian as a cold arrogant smile flickered in her eyes. I'll let you die knowing that the Zhu Sha you killed was my uncle. Roar. A low roar drifted over from afar. Shu Wanyu furrowed her brows as she turned her gaze over. After which, she saw a demonic beast howling in her direction. On the back of the demonic beast, there were a few silhouettes, one of whom she recognized. It was none other than Bailu Jing, a ranker on the heavenly fate rankings. Michem. Not far away, the masked swordsman had already destroyed the third-ranked puppets. Initially, he thought that it would be enough to just sit back and watch Qin Wentian die. Who would have thought that he would have to act personally? Evidently, Shu Wanyu had no way to deal with this Bailu Jing. Sword intent permeated the air. Instantly, the masked swordsman dashed over, slashing down with his sword. The will of the sword was released, and Qin Wentian and the others only felt their bodies being enveloped by the terrifying sword intent, on the verge of destruction. Bailu Jing soared up into the air, activating his Hurricane Astral Soul and Seven Slaughters Astral Soul at the same time. His body was like the wind, soaring up into the clouds. His killing intent filled the air as he executed the 9 beheadings of the Great Sun, clashing head-on with the incoming sword. Sir, who are you? Bailu Jing stared at the masked swordsman. However, the masked swordsman didn't say a word, slashing out with his sword once more. He didn't want others to know what his astral souls were. Shu Wanyu, quickly make your move, the masked man commanded Shu Wanyu as he restrained Bailu Jing. Shu Wanyu nodded lightly. Her mandate of fire abruptly erupted forth, causing Qin Wentian to feel as though his entire body was about to be ignited. The first level of the mandate of fire, ignition. Not only that, Shu Wanyu's mandate of fire had already reached the transformation boundary, and was extremely ferocious. This woman's figure is really not bad. She's got a lot of potential. Fan Lu murmured, causing Shu Wanyu's beautiful eyes to freeze. After which, a baleful aura flickered in her eyes as she stared at Fan Lu. However, Fan Lu didn't seem to care at all. His eyes narrowed as he stared at Shu Wanyu's chest, causing the flames on her body to burn even more violently. You're courting death. Shu Wanyu roared. After which, she took a step forward and blasted out with her jade-like palms, manifesting a flaming palm imprint that blasted towards Qin Wentian and the other two. This palm imprint actually disintegrated in the air, enveloping Qin Wentian, Fan Lu, and Chu Mang. Qin Wentian's Heavenly Hammer Astral Soul and Great Dream Astral Soul were released, but the luster of their astral souls was masked by Qin Wentian. Even so, the power of his astral souls was still extremely shocking. Releasing his will of mandates, Qin Wentian's blood began to boil. The demonic qi exuding from him towered up into the heavens. Taking a step forward, he frenziedly blasted out with his palms as the shadow of a great rock coalesced in the air, transforming into a terrifying great rock that howled in rage as it rushed out, colliding head-on with the flaming palm imprint. The Yellow Springs monument shuddered violently as it bore down on Shu Wanyu, causing her blood vessels to throb. Brother Mang, ignite! Fan Li's Empyrean Flames bloodline erupted forth as golden flames ignited. His palms slammed into Chu Mang's body, instantly causing Chu Mang's body to be engulfed in flames as well. Releasing his astral souls, Chu Mang howled in rage as he drew his bow and shot out 3 arrows. Instant strike. Shu Wanyu furrowed her brows. Her astral soul from the exalted flame body cascaded downwards as a layer of flame armor covered her body. Boom! A powerful force slammed into the flame armor, causing Shu Ruanyu to be forced to retreat. Qin Wentian floated in the air, as though he was preparing something. Within Qin Wentian's body, third-rank divine energy was frenziedly condensing. Currently, his first Yuanfu had already withered away, while a terrifying tempest was brewing in his second Yuanfu. He had no way to condense fourth-rank divine inscriptions in a short period of time. However, if he were to erupt forth a boundless amount of third-rank divine energy in an instant, the power unleashed in that instant would definitely be enough to make Shu Ruanyu suffer. Although this was a method of killing 1,000 enemies while sacrificing 800 of his own, the consumption of astral energy in his Yuanfu was simply too terrifying. However, right now, he could only go all out. Divine energy was his advantage, and so was his third Yuanfu. Pu, Pu, numerous arrows rained down on Shu Ruanyu's body, as though there was no end to them. At such a close distance, it was extremely difficult for her to block an instant-kill arrow, especially one that could change direction. Fan Le didn't attack, he actually used his powerful will to control the direction of Chu Mang's arrows, causing them to change direction at the last moment. In just a short instant, Shu Ruanyu's countenance flushed red from anger. Her face was so red that it felt as though blood would drip out at any moment. The arrows that Fan Le was controlling were actually unceasingly shooting towards her breasts. Although she had the protection of the flame armor, such an attack was enough to drive her crazy. Qin Wentian couldn't help but perspire in his heart as he stared at Chu Mang's arrows. This damnable fatty was truly a genius, he actually wanted to anger this beautiful maiden to death. However, Shu Ruanyu's flame armor was definitely an innate technique. If not, with Chu Mang's cultivation base at the 6th level of Yuanfu, how could he not be able to penetrate through ordinary astral energy armor? The astral energy circulating around the flame armor grew increasingly intense, as the glow of her astral souls unceasingly cascaded downwards. Shu Ruanyu's demeanor seemed to be undergoing a transformation. Her long hair fluttered in the wind as she took a step forward. The mandate of flames she exuded was so strong that it seemed as though it wanted to incinerate Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian was still channeling his power. His palms slammed onto the injured area on his chest as a blood-colored beam of light once again shot towards the Yellow Springs Monument in the air. The might of the Yellow Springs Monument grew even stronger, and as it pressed downwards, it frenziedly suppressed Shu Ruanyu's eruption. Ruanyu. At this moment, a beam of light shot out from behind Shu Ruanyu. That silhouette instantly appeared, and with a single grab, a terrifying star-seizing palm imprint shot towards Qin Wentian. Young Fan. Qin Wentian's countenance sank as he explosively retreated. However, that terrifying palm imprint still slammed into his body. With a thunderous boom, Qin Wentian coughed out a mouthful of blood as he was flung through the air. Courting death. Yang Fan's eyes flickered like lightning. His star-seizing palms once again blasted towards Fan Le and Chu Mang. The arrows whistled through the air, but they were directly shattered by the star-seizing palms. A thunderous boom rang out as both Fan Le and Chu Mang were flung through the air. Among the rankers on the Heavenly Fate rankings, Chu Mang, Fan Le, and the rest were simply too far apart. Come back. Qin Wentian's aura fluctuated as he commanded. Momentarily, the 4th-ranked bladed puppet sped towards Yang Fan. Yang Fan's countenance sank, only to see the bladed puppet madly rushing towards him, slashing out with its saber. That saber light was so sharp that it seemed as though it could sever the entire space. At this moment, an intense killing intent flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. Who cared who Qin Wentian was? Since things had already reached this point, there was no need for him to hold back any longer. Let's go over and kill him. Hua Xiaoyun spoke to the guard beside him after seeing the puppet leaving. That guard nodded his head, and with Hua Xiaoyun in tow, he sped towards Qin Wentian. But before he could act, Qin Wentian had already acted. Qin Wentian soared through the air, walking towards Shu Wanyu as a terrifying cold light flickered in his eyes. Upon seeing Qin Wendian taking the initiative to walk towards her, Shu Wanyu's beautiful eyes similarly flashed with an intense rage. The flames in her palms grew increasingly intense, resembling scorching lava, filled with a terrifying heat. Bzzz, a raging wind gusted by as Qin Wendian dashed towards Shu Wanyu. You're courting death. Shu Wanyu's fiery palms blasted out, aiming for Qin Wendian. The flames scorched the heavens, and the entire space around them seemed to have been set ablaze. At the same time, Qin Wendian blasted out with both of his palms. In that instant, the yuanfu and arterial pathways in his body started to churn violently. The divine energy within one of his yuanfu erupted forth, transforming into countless swords of slaughter, as well as the terrifying shadow of a great rock, blotting out the skies. Shu Wanyu's countenance stiffened as she blasted out with both her palms. Numerous flaming silhouettes frenziedly defended against the eruption of divine yuan energy. The Yellow Springs monument in the air pressed downwards, causing Shu Wanyu to groan in misery. Finally, she couldn't endure it any longer and coughed out a mouthful of blood. A crisp cracking sound rang out as her armor shattered into pieces. In the midst of the destructive aura, she suddenly saw a demonic eye. As this eye swept past her, her mind trembled. Scram! It was as though Shu Wanyu could sense that Qin Wendian would unleash a ferocious attack at this moment. She slammed out with her palms once more. Evidently, she hadn't expected Qin Wendian to erupt forth with such a terrifying strength at this instant. If not, she wouldn't have chosen to fight in such close combat. Pooh! A mouthful of scorching hot blood splattered onto Shu Wanyu's face. This was none other than Qin Wendian's blood. This caused Shu Wanyu to close her eyes, and in the next instant, a pair of palms filled with power directly slammed into her chest, as the destructive energy madly gushed into her body. Bzzz. Violent flames erupted forth, burning Qin Wendian's body. Do you want to perish together with me? A cold voice rang out in Shu Wanyu's mind, causing her heart to tremble. Qin Wendian didn't hold back as he mercilessly delivered a few more palm strikes to her, causing blood to flow unceasingly from the corners of her mouth. Release her. A voice filled with rage rang out. When Hua Xiaoyun's protector rushed over, the blade-wielding puppet had already given up on killing Yang Fan, choosing instead to obstruct Hua Xiaoyun's protector. In that short instant, Qin Wendian had already captured Shu Wanyu. However, from the perspective of the spectators, it seemed as though Qin Wendian was hugging Shu Wanyu tightly. How could Yang Fan not be enraged at such a scene? Shu Wanyu's beautiful eyes turned pale with fright as her countenance turned pale. Initially, she still had a chance, but after hearing Qin Wendian's icy voice, "Do you want to perish together with me?" This caused her to miss out on the best opportunity. However, Qin Wendian didn't show the slightest bit of politeness, and continued to attack her several more times, causing her to be suppressed by Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian was also heavily injured. If it weren't for his all-out attack, he wouldn't have had the chance to subdue Shu Wanyu. Currently, the 3 yuanfu in his body were on the verge of drying up. Only his demon yuanfu still had some astral energy left, but in a battle of this level, he wouldn't be able to sustain it for long. You are Zhan Chen. A voice drifted over from the void. It was none other than Bailu Jing's voice. Qin Wendian swept his gaze over, staring at the masked swordsman in the air, before shifting his gaze onto Yang Fan, Hua Xiaoyun, and the rest. His gaze was incomparably cold. It seemed like the people of the Moon continent wouldn't be able to tolerate him anymore. However, what did he have to be afraid of? As he thought of this, a ruthless glint flickered in Qin Wendian's eyes. Chapter 299. Zhan Chen, a heavens chosen from the Pill Emperor Hall. Yang Fan, a heavens chosen from the star-seizing manor. Hua Xiaoyun, although his status in the Hua clan wasn't high, his elder brother, Hua Taishu, was the top ranker in the heavenly fate rankings. These people all bore a grudge against him, and to Zhang Chen, they all wanted to silence him. Maybe in Yang Fan's eyes, it didn't matter if he killed him or not. If they met, so be it. Since this was the case, he wouldn't stay in the moon continent any longer. What else was there for him to fear? He. Qin Wendian inclined his head, and upon seeing Hua Xiaoyun's protector rushing over, he coldly laughed. If you don't want her to die, you'd better stand there and not move. What does she have to do with me? Hua Xiaoyun's protector coldly replied. You can say that to Yang Fan. Qin Wendian laughed, and momentarily, Hua Xiaoyun's protector didn't dare to act recklessly. If Qin Wendian really went crazy and killed Shu Shu, although Yang Fan wouldn't spare Qin Wendian, if he vented his anger on Qin Wendian, a mere heavenly dipper sovereign like him wouldn't be able to escape the clutches of the star-seizing manor. Release her, and the matter between us shall be written off, Yang Fan stated to Qin Wendian. If you want to act, then act. But now, you want to write it off. Qin Wendian swept his gaze over to Yang Fan. Release Shu Wanyu. Even if he could walk out of the moon continent alive, it would still be a problem. How could the current him trust his enemies so easily? Little rascal, come over here. Qin Wendian glanced at Little Rascal. Momentarily, Little Rascal brought Fan Lu and Chu Mang to his side. Release me. Shu Wanyu felt incomparably embarrassed. She was tightly hugged by Qin Wendian, and it felt as though she was lying on top of Qin Wendian. Miss Shu's words are too funny. Qin Wendian's palms trembled as he delivered another palm strike onto Shu Wanyu's body. A terrifying amount of energy gushed into her body, causing her to groan in agony. Since Miss Shu wants to kill me, don't joke around. Qin Wendian said indifferently. Yang Fan's eyes were gloomy, as though he could kill someone. Shu Wanyu was Yang Fan's fiancée, yet now she was being humiliated by Qin Wendian. If you dare to touch her again, I guarantee that you will die. Yang Fan threatened coldly. I have no regrets if I can die with a beauty. Qin Wendian smiled sarcastically. He was not afraid at all. Gazing into the air, he glanced at the masked swordsman in the air and said with a smile, however, Yang Fan, you value this woman so much. It seems that your feelings for her are not ordinary, much better than for Zhang Chen. Buzz. As the sound of his voice faded, the masked swordsman whistled through the air as Bailu Jing blocked his path. This caused Qin Wendian to laugh. Seems like you are indeed Zhang Chen. The eyes of the masked swordsman stiffened. He knew that he had been tricked. However, Qin Wendian continued, Zhang Chen, you didn't dare to step past the traps in the refinement grounds, so you fed a medicinal pill to your lover to stimulate her potential, allowing her to act as a scout for you. In the end, she died in the refinement grounds. Who would have thought that I would encounter her? I was too impatient to silence her. As the sound of Qin Wendian's voice faded, the spectators all had expressions of shock on their faces. Zhang Chen had personally caused the death of his lover. Since Zhang Chen wanted to kill him so badly, there was no need to hide this secret any longer. Qin Wendian should go back and think about how he would explain this to the Pill Emperor Hall. What a pitiful beauty. She clearly knew that you were a wolf with wild ambitions, and that there was something strange about the medicinal pill, yet she still willingly consumed it, dying for you. Zhang Chen, where is your conscience? Qin Wendian coldly stated. That masked swordsman actually calmed down, no longer daring to kill Qin Wendian. At this moment, if he were to madly rush towards Qin Wendian again, it would undoubtedly mean that he was Zhang Chen. At the same time, he would also be admitting that Qin Wendian's words were true. Zhang Chen definitely couldn't admit this. Despite the towering killing intent in his heart, he could only endure it. No one had seen his true face, and since he wasn't Zhang Chen, he naturally couldn't kill him to silence him. But in his heart, he had already sentenced Qin Wendian to death for betraying him. Big Brother Jing, in the future, if Zhang Chen wants to deal with you, it means that the person in front of you is definitely Zhang Chen. Qin Wendian coldly laughed. Since Zhang Chen didn't want to admit it now, in the future when Zhang Chen wanted to deal with Bai Lu Jing, he would have to admit it. Now that he was fighting against Bai Lu Jing, it was equivalent to admitting to Qin Wendian's words. At that time, the Pill Emperor Hall wouldn't help Zhang Chen. Zhang Chen was destined to swallow this grievance. Even if he died, he wouldn't admit it. Who asked him to disguise himself as an assassin to deal with Qin Wendian? At this moment, Zhang Chen's heart was incomparably sullen. You're dead for sure. Hua Xiaoyun stared at Qin Wendian, the smile on his face growing increasingly malevolent. This Qin Wendian must have gone mad. Kidnapping Shu Wanyu, and even exposing Zhang Chen's secret. Regardless of whether it was true or false, Zhang Chen would definitely kill Qin Wendian. Zhang Chen wouldn't admit that it was him today, and similarly, he wouldn't admit to Qin Wendian's words. But as long as he said that Qin Wendian had maliciously slandered him, this excuse would be sufficient for him to kill Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian would die without a doubt. Qin Wendian didn't bother with Hua Xiaoyun. His gaze shifted onto Qing Er's battlefield. The translucent golden lotus light screen shattered, revealing Qing Er's silhouette. The golden armored puppet had already been crippled. However, the reason why it was crippled was because it had assisted Qing Er in killing the female Heavenly Dipper cultivator from the Heavenly Dipper realm. A puppet in exchange for a Heavenly Dipper realm cultivator. Out of the 4 Heavenly Dipper realm cultivators from the Heavenly Dipper realm, 3 had already died. This time, the Heavenly Dipper realm had suffered heavy casualties. The last person was the coachman. He stared at Qing Er, the killing intent radiating from him was even stronger than before. His strength was also the strongest among the Heavenly Dipper realm cultivators. You leave first. Qing Er's melodious voice rang out. Even without turning her head, Qin Wendian knew that she was talking to him. I'll be fine. Seeing that Qin Wendian didn't move, Qing Er's voice was filled with confidence. I'm not worried about him. Qin Wendian spoke. Qing Er's beautiful eyes flickered as she understood. Qin Wendian was worried that other people in the moon continent would act against her. For example, the star-seizing manor. Master gave me a life-saving treasure. This time around, Qing Er's voice directly rang out in Qin Wendian's ears, causing Qin Wendian to suddenly understand. That's right, Qing Er was the disciple of Fairy Qingmei. How could she not have life-saving treasures on her? Fairy Qingmei had sent Qing Er here to protect him. It was impossible that she hadn't considered the possibility that Qing Er herself might be in danger. Let's kill someone before we leave, Qin Wendian indifferently replied, as his gaze abruptly shifted onto Hua Xiaoyun. Not long ago, Hua Xiaoyun had ordered his guards to kill him. Hence, he wasn't too far away from Qin Wendian. At this moment, in front of Hua Xiaoyun and his guards, was the golden armored puppet. Qin Wendian's eyes flickered with a terrifying coldness, causing Hua Xiaoyun's expression to stiffen. Qin Wendian couldn't even protect himself, yet he still wanted to kill him. Fan Lu and Chu Mang were already prepared, their arrows already nocked. Hua Xiaoyun's guards froze, as they pulled Hua Xiaoyun's body along as they retreated. At the same time, the golden armored puppet dashed forward. Qing Er also seemed to understand Qin Wendian's intentions. She turned her gaze over as her mandate of space gushed forth. Instantly, Hua Xiaoyun's guards felt as though they had collided into a spatial barrier. In that short instant, the golden armored puppet had already arrived, its ice-cold blades slashing towards Hua Xiaoyun's guards. Little Rascal also dashed forward, bringing Qin Wendian and the other 2 closer to Hua Xiaoyun. Qin Wendian's purpose in coming to the moon continent was to kill Hua Xiaoyun. Now that Hua Xiaoyun was so close to him, how could he not die? Have you gone crazy? Hua Xiaoyun roared in rage upon seeing Qin Wendian closing in on him. Hua Xiaoyun's guards blocked the golden armored puppet's attack, and just as he was about to send a palm strike towards Qin Wendian, he saw Shu Wanyu standing in front of Qin Wendian. If he attacked Qin Wendian, the first person he would kill would be Shu Wanyu. Scram! With a roar of rage, Hua Xiaoyun's guards slammed both palms onto the golden-armored puppet. In that instant, a crisp sound rang out from the golden-armored puppet, as though it was on the verge of exploding. At the same time, a third eye appeared in the center of Qin Wentian's brows, penetrating straight into Hua Xiaoyun's sea of consciousness. In that instant, Hua Xiaoyun's mind went blank. The one who attacked him earlier wasn't Qin Er, but Qin Wentian. Boom! Hua Xiaoyun clutched his head with one hand as the arrow whistled through the air. The countenance of Hua Xiaoyun's guard drastically changed. The instant the golden-armored puppet exploded, a boundless amount of saber light swept through the entire space. It was difficult for him to free his hands, but for the sake of Hua Xiaoyun's life, he had no choice but to grab hold of the arrow. Arg! A piercing sound rang out as Hua Xiaoyun's guard screamed in agony. His arm was severed by the saber light, and the shockwaves of the explosion continued unabated. Wasn't the creator of this golden-armored puppet a little too ruthless? The most ruthless attack came from the self-detonation of the golden-armored puppet. Hua Xiaoyun! A thunderous roar thundered out. Hua Xiaoyun inclined his head and stared into Qin Wentian's eyes, only to see Qin Wentian stretching out his palm and pointing a finger in front of him. Instantly, a boundless amount of demonic qi gushed forth, causing the entire space to darken. As the finger landed, the demonic qi in the air seemed to sever the heavens. The purpose of this trip to the moon continent is to kill you. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, Hua Xiaoyun's mind went blank, only that ice-cold voice remained. The purpose of this trip to the moon continent was to kill him. Now, no matter the cost, he had to make sure he stayed here. Pooh! The heaven-breaking finger slammed into Hua Xiaoyun's head, instantly killing him. Although his mastery of the heaven-breaking finger wasn't perfect, it was more than enough to kill Hua Xiaoyun. Hua Xiaoyun would use his life to pay for the enmity of Qin Cheng. Qin Wentian didn't hesitate to travel all the way from Chu to the moon continent just to kill him. As soon as Qin Wentian's heaven-breaking finger fell, the little guy turned around and flew away. Arg! His fourth-ranked puppet had been destroyed, but it had also caused him to almost lose his life. Hua Xiaoyun, whom he was protecting, had also died. Now that he was heavily injured, he didn't even think about killing Qin Wentian. Instead, he was thinking about how he could save his own life. Hua Xiaoyun had died. Even if he was trash, he was still a descendant of the Hua clan. Hua Xiaoyun's parents, as well as Hua Taishu, would definitely not allow him to live. He had to escape. The battle today could be said to be extremely brutal. All of Qin Wentian's puppets had been destroyed, and he himself had sustained heavy injuries. Yang Fan stepped out, chasing after Qin Wentian, who was about to leave. You haven't released her yet. If you continue to chase after me, a life for a life. If you stop now, I, Qin Wentian, guarantee that I won't harm her life. Qin Wentian's voice drifted over. How can I trust you? Yang Fan icily replied. I can use my status as his friend to guarantee that he will spare Shu Wanyu, Bailu Jing indifferently stated. In order to allow Qin Wentian to leave as soon as possible, Bailu Jing had made this promise, causing Qin Wentian to feel extremely touched. Zhan Chen was ranked number 11 in the Heavenly Fate rankings, and it was obvious that he was stronger than Bailu Jing. However, after Qin Wentian revealed his secret, Zhan Chen didn't dare to release his astral souls, nor did he dare to use his strongest innate techniques. In fact, there were many techniques that he couldn't use. Fine, Qin Wentian, remember this. If anything happens to Wanyu, both Bailu Jing and Bailu Yi will die for sure. Yang Fan's voice was as cold as ice. I will release her. As for Yang Fan and Zhan Chen, I, Qin, will remember this. Qin Wentian's silhouette disappeared in the distance. Yang Fan halted his steps, yet his gaze was still fixed on Qin Wentian's back. Qin Wentian could be considered lucky today. The reason why Bailu Jing, Fan Lu and Chu Mang appeared was because they wanted to inform him of the White Deer Institute's decision. But who would have thought that when they were about to arrive, little rascal would know that Qin Wentian was in danger. Naturally, if it weren't for Qin Wentian's determination to capture Wan Yu as a hostage, even if the other experts hadn't arrived yet, Yang Fan would have been able to kill him. Chapter 300. Yang Fan didn't chase after Qin Wentian. Bailu Jing and Bailu Yi were Qin Wentian's good friends, they wouldn't be able to escape. Yang Fan believed that Qin Wentian wouldn't dare to do anything to Shu Wanyu. Qin Wentian wasn't worried, he had already done what he needed to do in the Moon Continent. Hua Xiaoyun was already dead, and the White Deer Institute already knew of his existence. There was no need for him to worry about the Pill Emperor Hall or the Star-Seizing Manor acting against him. To the Pill Emperor Hall, the only person he had offended was Zhan Chen. As for the Star-Seizing Manor, he had a grudge with Yang Fan. These transcendent powers wouldn't interfere in the matters of the younger generations. The one who would bring danger to Qin Wentian was the Hua clan. Although Hua Xiaoyun had no status in the Hua clan, his parents and elder brother Hua Taishu would definitely not spare Qin Wentian. He couldn't stay in the Moon Continent any longer. Little rascal's current speed was already extremely fast. They directly sped towards the easternmost region of the Moon Continent, exiting the boundaries of the Moon Continent. In the air, amidst the clouds, Qin Wentian cast a glance back at the vast ancient city. Grand Xia had millions of cities, and the 9 continents stood at the pinnacle of them all. Maybe what he had left behind in this ancient city was just a small stroke of history, and the things he had done wouldn't be able to bring too much shock to the people of this ancient city. After all, the commotion caused by those heavenly dipper sovereigns was far more eye-catching. However, the words spoken by Qin Wentian the other day still caused a huge commotion, especially in the Pill Emperor Hall. Countless disciples were discussing the same thing, Zhan Chen. And just like what Qin Wentian had predicted, Zhan Chen naturally denied it. He had always told his master that Qin Yu's death had something to do with Qin Wentian. These discussions finally reached Mo Qingqing's ears. Very swiftly, she found out everything about Qin Wentian, as well as everything he had sacrificed. Within the Pill Emperor Hall on the 99 steps, Mo Qingqing slowly walked forwards. Every step she took was extremely heavy, and her beautiful eyes were filled with tears. Just moments ago, she found out that Qin Wentian had killed his way into the Moon Continent, sparing no expense to kill Hua Xiaoyun. I came to the Moon Continent to kill you. In the eyes of others, these simple words caused Mo Qingqing's heart to melt. Her heartstrings were deeply stirred. Who was he that he had traveled millions of miles from Chu to the Moon Continent to kill Hua Xiaoyun? For her, Mo Qingqing. In front of Mo Qingqing, her master, Luo He, Zhan Chen, as well as Zhan Chen's master, were all present. Junior sister is here. Zhan Chen smiled at Mo Qingqing, only to see Mo Qingqing coldly glancing at him. That gaze of hers was so cold that it could pierce right into the bones, causing Zhan Chen's heart to turn cold. Master, do you know who the 4th-ranked divine inscriptionist that Zhan Chen spoke of is? Mo Qingqing asked as she stared at her master, Luo He. Luo He stared at Mo Qingqing in bewilderment as she asked, Qingqing, do you know him? Master has seen him before. At that time, I was heavily injured and unconscious, Mo Qingqing calmly replied. Glancing at Bai Fei, who was standing beside Luo He, she added, Senior sister Bai Fei knows him as well. Bai Fei's beautiful eyes narrowed, she instantly understood that Mo Qingqing already knew. Bai Fei, what's going on? Luo He glanced at Bai Fei, only to see Bai Fei lowering her head as she replied, Qin Wentian is none other than the man that junior sister Qingqing fell in love with back in Chu. Luo He's eyes flashed with a sharp light. That legendary 4th-ranked divine inscriptionist was actually Mo Qingqing's lover. Zhan Chen said that senior sister Qing Yue's death had something to do with him, and he said that Zhan Chen was the culprit. Regardless of the Pill Emperor Hall's attitude, I would naturally believe him. Mo Qingqing's words caused Zhan Chen's countenance to turn incredibly unsightly. Junior sister, are you saying that I would harm Qing Yue? Don't call me junior sister. I have nothing to do with you, Mo Qingqing coldly replied. Impudent. Luo He berated, only to see Mo Qingqing calmly looking at her. Master, he spared no expense to kill Hua Xiaoyun. You should understand why he didn't hesitate to offend the Hua clan in order to kill Hua Xiaoyun. Luo He's eyes flickered as she recalled the grudge between Mo Qingqing and Hua Xiaoyun. Because of you. He said that the reason he came to the moon continent was to kill Hua Xiaoyun. He came all the way here from Chu to kill Hua Xiaoyun for me. A gentle smile appeared on Mo Qingqing's cold countenance as she continued, but now, the Pale Emperor Hall wants to kill him. As she spoke up to hear, Mo Qingqing's tone grew even colder. I know Master treats me very well, and has taught me many things. I respect Master, but even before I was acquainted with Master, I had already fallen in love with him. He was willing to travel thousands of miles to the moon continent, sparing no expense to kill Hua Xiaoyun. If anything happens to him, Qingqing will also spare no expense to avenge him. Hence, disciple doesn't wish to become a traitor to the Pale Emperor Hall. Please forgive disciple for being disrespectful. After which, Mo Qingqing bowed to Luo He as she stated in a low voice, disciple shall take her leave. Mo Qingqing turned and left, while Luo He was so angry that her body was trembling. Vile disciple. Mo Qingqing's last sentence, saying that she didn't wish to become a traitor to the Pale Emperor Hall, was undoubtedly telling Luo He that if the Pale Emperor Hall killed Qin Wentian, she would become a traitor to the Pale Emperor Hall. How could Luo He not be angered? She had done so much for Mo Qingqing. Zhang Chen's countenance turned ashen. Initially, he was very interested in Mo Qingqing, whom Luo He deeply doted on. But who would have thought that because of Qin Wentian, Mo Qingqing would view him as an enemy? Qin Wentian. The hatred in Zhang Chen's heart for Qin Wentian grew to the extreme, yet he maintained a calm expression on his face. Maintaining a gentle and cultured demeanor, he stated, Master, senior aunt, disciple doesn't wish to argue with you. Currently, my cultivation has reached a bottleneck, and I wish to head out to temper myself for a period of time. At the same time, I need to prepare some resources to break through to the Heavenly Dipper realm. Work hard and break through to Heavenly Dipper within a year. Don't be distracted by this matter. Zhang Chen's master patted him on his shoulders in consolation. Heavenly Dipper was the first major hurdle for stellar martial cultivators, and many would never be able to cross it in their entire lives. However, with Zhang Chen's talent, it wasn't difficult for him to cross it. 5 days later, Qin Wentian was already far away from the moon continent. At this moment, he was at least 10,000 miles away from the moon continent, and was situated within a mountain range. Outside this mountain range, there was a small country. The Grand Xia Empire was extremely vast, and there were many small countries within it. Behind these small countries, there might be the shadow of the 9 continents, just like the relationship between the 9 mystical palace and Chu. Outside the cave dwelling, Qin Wentian sat cross-legged with a Yuan meteor stone in his hands. He released his astral souls as the blood in his body surged. After a few days of recuperation, his aura gradually calmed down, and his injuries were almost fully healed. When will you release me? A fiery red silhouette walked out from the cave dwelling. It was none other than Shu Wanyu, and although the color of blood had returned to her, she still looked extremely haggard. Why are you in such a hurry? Qin Wentian opened his eyes, glancing at Shu Wanyu as he stated, Miss Shu, you should focus on recuperating. You bastard! Shu Wanyu's countenance turned ashen. These few days, she had been resting in this cave dwelling, and even at night, she didn't dare to close her eyes. That damnable fatty's eyes would occasionally roam about her body, causing her to want nothing more than to gouge his eyes out. Qin Wentian stood up and walked towards Shu Wanyu. Upon seeing Qin Wentian walking towards her, Shu Wanyu involuntarily retreated. An expression of shame and anger appeared on her face as she glared at Qin Wentian. What do you want? Qin Wentian walked towards Shu Wanyu. Shu Wanyu gritted her teeth, as a hint of fear flickered in her eyes. Astral energy started to fluctuate from her body. If you dare to touch me, even if I die, Bailu Yi and Bailu Jing won't be able to live either, Shu Wanyu threatened. Let me remind you one more time, when I'm cultivating, it's best if you don't disturb me. Qin Wendian emotionlessly spoke, as he swept his gaze over Shu Wanyu's body. Also, I have no interest in you. After speaking, Qin Wendian turned and sat back down, causing Shu Wanyu to clench her fists tightly, as her countenance grew incredibly unsightly to behold. This damnable bastard. Since you've already inscribed a divine imprint here, shouldn't you at least allow me to recover my cultivation base? Shu Wanyu refused to give up. Qin Wendian had placed a formation on her body, causing her astral energy to circulate at an extremely slow rate. Even now, her injuries had yet to recover. Don't you think it's a little ungentlemanly for you to treat a weak girl like this? Shu Wanyu continued when she saw Qin Wendian remaining silent. Fatty. Qin Wendian called out. Momentarily, Fan Lu descended from the skies. He cast a glance at Shu Wanyu, and in an instant, Shu Wanyu shut her mouth as she turned and walked towards the cave dwelling. Little rascal and Chu Mang aren't back yet? Qin Wendian asked Fan Lu. Brother Mang has a lot of strength, and there are plenty of demonic beasts in the depths of the mountain range for him to train with. Fan Lu grinned, as a smile flickered in his eyes. I'm going to take a walk outside. If we continue heading east, we'll be able to reach the Azure Continent after passing through a few more countries. Azure Continent. An expression of contemplation appeared on Qin Wendian's face. The Azure Emperor Palace was located in the Azure Continent, but the current Azure Emperor Palace was no longer the same as it was in the past. Although it was still a transcendent power, it was no longer the same as before. Other than the Azure Emperor Palace, it seemed that the clan of that fellow Ouyang was also located in the Azure Continent. If you want to obtain the top 3 rankings in the Heavenly Fate rankings of Grand Xia, you will definitely have to head to the 9 continents. Fan Li's expression grew serious as he stared at Qin Wendian. The White Deer Institute might very well become the #1 transcendent power in the Grand Xia Empire. Qin Wendian nodded his head. Obtaining the top 3 rankings in the Heavenly Fate rankings was something he definitely had to do. The reason why Bailu Jing accompanied Fan Lu and Chu Mang to look for him was because the White Deer Institute wanted Bailu Jing to pass on a message to Qin Wendian. After many days of discussion, the White Deer Institute finally came to a consensus. They naturally acknowledged Qin Wendian's attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. If Qin Wendian could obtain the top 3 rankings in the Heavenly Fate rankings, from then on, the White Deer Institute would completely accept their new identity and follow Qin Wendian's every command. In order to achieve this consensus, the White Deer Institute even stripped Bailu Tong's father of his position as an elder, allowing him to be in charge of the Tao of Divine Inscriptions while another doyen replaced him. This news was undoubtedly extremely important to Qin Wendian. If he could obtain the full support of the White Deer Institute, it would be much easier for him to reorganize the Hidden Azure faction. Chapter 301. Early in the morning, when she woke up, there were traces of moisture in the air. In the cave, Shu Wanyu was leaning against the mountain wall, her beautiful eyes closed and her hands covering her body. Although Qin Wendian had released her restraints yesterday, allowing her to cultivate, as long as she was in the cave, she would still be restricted. Drip, drip. A crisp sound rang out. Shu Wanyu opened her tired eyes and glanced at the cave. There was no one else in sight. Michem. Shu Wanyu instantly stood up and walked out of the cave. There was no one outside, only the water droplets falling from the trees could be heard. I'm leaving. Shu Wanyu let out a long sigh. Finally, she didn't need to worry about that damnable fatty anymore. But in the past few days, Qin Wendian had kept his promise and didn't make things difficult for her. Qin Wendian, I will never forget you, Shu Wanyu coldly stated. After which, her silhouette flickered as she soared up into the air. Qin Wendian had long since left. He had released Shu Ruanyu because of Bailu Jing and Bailu Yi. What happened that day was all because of him. Capturing Shu Ruanyu and threatening her had nothing to do with Bailu Jing. As long as Shu Ruanyu was safe, Yang Fan wouldn't vent his anger on Bailu Jing. After all, the White Deer Institute still had some status in the eastern region of the Moon continent. Although it couldn't be compared to the Star-Seizing Manor, the Star-Seizing Manor wouldn't offend the White Deer Institute for no reason. And now, Qin Wentian was extremely cautious. Since he had released Shu Ruanyu, there was no way he would stay here any longer. Qiyun was a country that bordered the Azure continent, and was under the jurisdiction of the Azure continent. Qiyun was a subsidiary power of the Transcendent Power, the Ouyang aristocrat clan, similar to the relationship between the Nine Mystical Palace and Chu. Although the Ouyang aristocrat clan was a transcendent power, if they wanted to continue to stand tall in the 9 continents, they naturally had to be exaggerated. Just relying on the bloodline of the Ouyang aristocrat clan wasn't enough. In Grand Xia, all transcendent powers would constantly recruit new blood, and the Ouyang aristocrat clan was no exception. Outside of the royal capital of Qiyun, there was a famous mountain, the Gazing Dragon Mountain. It was one of the most famous mountain ranges in Qiyun. The reason why the Gazing Dragon Mountain range was so famous was because of the Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart. The Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart was incomparably wondrous, and one could comprehend innate techniques from it. It was rumored that the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns of Qiyun had left this treasure for the cultivators of Qiyun. For a small country, stepping into the Heaven Dipper realm meant that they had reached a certain level. It was impossible for them to stay there for long, and they would leave. Among them, there were some who were reluctant to leave their homeland and were willing to leave behind some things for their descendants. After thousands of years, the Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart was built. The stone platforms on the ancient mountain in front of the Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart seemed to have been flattened by wuxiu. Every day, many figures would come here to meditate on the Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart, trying to obtain some of the divine abilities passed down by the ancestors. At this moment, on one of the stone platforms, a young man with a burly physique was unceasingly brandishing the great axe in his hands. Every swing of the axe contained no astral energy, yet it was as if the wind was stirred up by it. The skin of this burly young man was bronze in color, and the muscles on his body were extremely sturdy, as though he was filled with an explosive strength. However, he didn't seem to be too old, and was definitely no older than 25 years of age. What was even more interesting was that this young man had already been brandishing the great axe for a total of 7 days without stopping. It was as though he didn't care about how others viewed him. "How much do you guys guess the weight of this great axe?" Someone on one of the stone platforms asked with a smile. "I'm afraid it's at least 250 jin. This man has nothing but brute strength." Another person on another stone platform replied. "His axe technique seems to be getting heavier and heavier, yet he doesn't seem tired at all. How strange. There are so many strange people. Over there, isn't there someone who sleeps all day long? Have you guys ever seen him not sleeping?" At this moment, someone pointed to a stone platform not far away from the burly young man. There was a young man quietly lying there, as though the wind and rain of the outside world had nothing to do with him. Both of them are idiots. The day before yesterday, there was a heavy downpour, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. This burly young man didn't seem to notice and continued swinging his great axe. That person was even sleeping there. How strange. But what was even more strange was that beside that person, there was an extremely beautiful snow-white puppy quietly lying there. It would occasionally get up and move around, looking extremely adorable. "Little rascal, come here." At this moment, a young girl with a pure and innocent appearance called out to the snow-white puppy. The body of the snow-white puppy flickered and instantly leapt into the arms of the young girl, causing the young girl to giggle. She hugged the puppy in her arms and gently stroked it with her tiny hands. Little rascal seemed to be enjoying it very much, causing many to cast envious and jealous gazes at him. "Your master is truly lazy, he doesn't even care if you are hungry or not." The young girl glanced in the direction of Qin Wentian. These days, she had become very familiar with Little Rascal and would often come over to hug it. However, its master had always been sleeping there. Yishi, you're here. Not far away, a slightly plump silhouette walked over. The young girl glanced at him and smiled. What are you doing here again? I'm the brother of that little fellow's master. Fan Lu smiled. However, the young girl snorted and asked Little Rascal, is he? Little Rascal, come here. Fatty called out to Little Rascal. Little Rascal's head popped out and glanced at Fan Lu. After which, it acted as though it didn't recognize Fan Lu and dove back into Yishi's embrace. Did you see that? Yishi glared at Fan Lu, causing Fatty to roll his eyes. What an ingrate. Fan Lu sat down, bored. He glanced at the sleeping Qin Wentian and the hatchet-wielding Chu Mang. They had already been in Chiyun for quite some time, and their destination this time around was naturally the Azure Continent. However, Qin Wentian wanted to raise his strength before entering the Azure Continent. After cultivating for a period of time, he found out that this was the hopeful Dragon Mountain Rampart. At this moment, the sleeping Qin Wentian suddenly sat up. Little Rascal's snow-white body instantly transformed into a beam of white light as it dashed into Qin Wentian's embrace. Little Rascal's little paws unceasingly scratched at Qin Wentian's body, appearing exceptionally intimate. Boss, you're finally awake. Fan Li's eyes brightened as he turned to Qin Wentian. Boss, this is Yi Shi, my friend. She's quite close to Little Rascal, but this little fellow actually doesn't recognize me. How detestable. Who are you talking to? Qin Wentian couldn't recognize Fatty at all. Glancing at Yi Shi, he couldn't help but feel disdain in his heart. Fatty was truly a man of universal love. You win. Fan Lu was completely speechless. How rare, the sleeping god actually woke up. Someone exclaimed in astonishment. This fellow really knows how to sleep. Sleeping god, are you here to cultivate or to sleep? Sleeping god. A smile curled up the corners of Qin Wentian's lips, curled up in a speechless smile. During this period of time, he hadn't stopped cultivating at all. After the great battle back then, his 3 Yuanfu had been emptied, and he was also heavily injured. After recovering from his injuries, he once again absorbed the astral energy in his body, filling his Yuanfu pool to the brim. To his surprise, his Yuanfu pool had actually expanded a little. Hence, he continued cultivating bitterly for a period of time, yet he still wasn't able to break through. It wasn't until he arrived at the Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart that he actually broke through to the 5th level of Yuanfu in a single day. How marvelous! Fatty, this rampart of the Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart is extremely marvelous. The innate techniques contained within are as numerous as the stars in the sky, allowing one to comprehend them. Qin Wentian spoke to Fan Lu, wanting to persuade him to cultivate more. Don't worry, I can still comprehend this rampart. Fatty grinned. Look, even Bro Mang can comprehend it, let alone a genius like me. Qin Wentian shifted his gaze onto Chu Mang. At first glance, Chu Mang's axe technique seemed ordinary, but upon closer inspection, he discovered that there was a marvelous intricacies hidden within. It's that axe technique. Qin Wentian's eyes brightened. There was an extremely marvelous axe technique within the Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart. Although it looked chaotic, it contained a majestic aura that allowed one to circulate the arterial pathways within one's body in sync with the axe technique. He's also your friend? Yishi's beautiful eyes flashed. Qin Wentian nodded his head. A bunch of weirdos. Yishi's lips twitched. However, someone at the side laughed. What a shameless boastful fellow. Could it be that the god of sleep can comprehend the Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart in his sleep? Qin Wentian swept his gaze over the crowd. The majority of the people here were at the Yuanfu realm, and there weren't many who were at the upper 3rd level of Yuanfu. Occasionally, there would be a few who were at the arterial circulation realm. Casually smiling, Qin Wentian didn't argue with them, and continued his cultivation in peace. In the blink of an eye, winter arrived. The rain and snow became ordinary, and occasionally, the howling of the cold wind could be heard. The number of wuxiu on the gazing dragon mountain rampart gradually decreased. Snowflakes danced in the air. Qin Wendian stretched out his hand, and a snowflake landed on his palm, melting away. Inclining his head, he stared at the sky. Amidst the snowflakes, that beautiful silhouette once again appeared. Another year had passed. Was Qingqing doing well in the Pil Emperor Hall? In Chu, his father, sister Qin Yao, teacher Mustang, senior sister Luo Huan, were they doing well? It was almost time for the annual memorial ceremony in Chu, and the Chu country should be bustling with activity. And now, he was already 19 years old. These 3 years felt like a very long time had passed, and he had experienced many things. The weather is cold, let's eat some hot snacks. Not far away, a young lady walked over with a bamboo basket filled with steaming hot snacks. Seeing the faint longing in Qin Wentian's eyes, she smiled. Wentian Gu, are you thinking of the girl you like? Qin Wentian gazed at the innocent smile on the young lady's face as he stretched out his hands and tousled her hair. During these few days, he and Yishi had become much closer. There's delicious food again. Fatty walked over as he grinned. Although Wu Xiu didn't need to eat, it was a wonderful thing to be able to satisfy his appetite occasionally. The three of them sat on the stone platform, and the atmosphere was extremely harmonious. At this moment, a beam of white light flashed past. Qin Wentian shifted his gaze over, only to see Chu Mang brandishing his great axe. Instantly, the snowflakes drifting down from the sky converged into a snow dragon that danced in the air. How beautiful! Yishi's beautiful eyes flickered. Qin Wentian's eyes also brightened as a smile appeared on his face. Chu Mang had broken through. This snow is really good. Qin Wentian smiled. Right now, their strength had all improved. Chapter 302. After Chu Mang slashed out with his axe, he finally stopped. Throwing his head back, he roared, "Awesome, ha ha ha." At this moment, Chu Mang only felt that his entire body was incomparably smooth, as though the snowflakes were dancing around him. "Brother Mang, you've been cultivating for so long, come and eat something." Qin Wentian called out. Only then did Chu Mang shift his gaze onto Qin Wentian and Fan Lu. Grinning, he replied, "Sure." Stepping out, Chu Mang walked to the stone platform where Qin Wentian was seated. Looking at Yi Shi, he asked, "Who is this lass?" "Big bro Chu Mang, my name is Yi Shi." Yi Shi smiled sweetly, causing Chu Mang to scratch his head awkwardly. "Yi Shi, this is the dessert you made, right? Let me have a taste." After speaking, Chu Mang grabbed the dessert and placed it in his mouth. His eyes lit up as he laughed, "It's delicious." "Yeah, Yishi's cooking is really good." Qin Wentian smiled. "It's snowing again." Chu Mang inclined his head, staring at the fluttering snowflakes. "I wonder how Big Bro is doing." "Don't worry, Big Bro Chu will definitely govern Chu well." Qin Wentian also thought of Chu Wuwei. That youth was always so calm, as though everything was in his grasp. Chu Mang heavily nodded his head, his eyes were slightly red. Truly, he missed his big brother very much. "Yi Shi, where's your family?" Qin Wentian turned to Yi Shi as he asked with a smile. Yi Shi's countenance dimmed as she forced a smile back at Qin Wentian. "They're in the royal capital of Qiyun." "Then why are you here?" Chu Mang was a little clumsy, he didn't notice Yi Shi's expression and continued asking. "I don't like that place, so I ran out." Yi Shi forced a smile. Chu Mang nodded his head as though he understood. "I won't talk to you guys anymore, I'm going back." Yi Shi took the basket and ran away. Qin Wentian stared at the back of the young girl. This lass, there seemed to be something weighing on her mind. That's right, a 16-year-old girl coming to the Gazing Dragon Mountain Wall every day, but it doesn't seem like she's here to cultivate. There must be some special reason. Wentian, when are we going to the Azure continent? Chu Mang asked Qin Wentian. I've encountered a bottleneck. I wish to cultivate for a period of time to see if I can break through it. If I can't, let's set off. Qin Wentian smiled. He had already been stuck at the 5th level of Yuanfu for quite some time now. Okay, let me see if there are any other innate techniques suitable for me. Chu Mang nodded. This snowfall lasted for a full 7 days. The snow was very heavy, and after it cleared up, the sunlight was especially abundant. The snow melted, and all living things came back to life. The world was filled with warmth and vitality, and the vast land was filled with a brand new scenery. Qin Wentian was still sleeping soundly. The lazy rays of light cascaded down on him, giving him an extremely comfortable feeling. His lips curled up into a faint smile, as though he was in a tranquil sleep. The gazing dragon mountain rampart was bustling with activity. After the first snow cleared up, many wuxiu from Qian came to the gazing dragon mountain rampart to cultivate. Chu Mang was still immersed in his own cultivation. Although he wasn't very intelligent, he was a martial arts fanatic. Once he immersed himself in his own world, nobody would be able to disturb him. This was also the reason why he was ranked number 1 among the 10 prodigies of Chu. Maybe it was precisely because of this state of mind that Chu Mang's cultivation efficiency was much higher than ordinary people. Although Fan Lu seemed lazy, he would often put in the effort in his cultivation. The word diligence was gradually imprinted in his bones. Hey, time to eat something. The voice of a young girl drifted over. Momentarily, Qin Wentian rolled over and stretched lazily, a warm and gentle smile on his face. Good morning, Yishi. Qin Wentian smiled. It's still early, Wentian bro. The sun is already shining on your butt. Yishi rolled her eyes at Qin Wentian. Hee, Yishi, where's your butt? Fatty Fan Lu grinned, causing Yishi's face to turn red. She glared at Fan Lu and mimicked Qin Wentian's tone, damn fatty. Ha! Chu Mang laughed uproariously when he heard Yishi's voice, especially when he saw Fan Li's reddened face. Placing his hands on his hips, he asked, Yishi, tell me clearly, which part of this genius is fat? Yes, I'm not fat at all. Yishi giggled. Little Rascal had already leaped onto Yishi's shoulder. The 4 humans and 1 little demonic beast were extremely harmonious. During this period of time, Yishi would frequently send over snacks because Qin Wentian and the rest would always eat happily. This caused Yishi to feel greatly encouraged. Naturally, the main reason was because Yishi felt extremely relaxed when she was with Qin Wentian and the rest. This kind of joyful feeling was something she liked very much. Not only that, she would often come to the gazing dragon mountain rampart. Little miss, you serve the sleeping god, Axe Demon, and that fatty every day, why don't you prepare some snacks for us as well? Someone teased. The sleeping god was naturally Qin Wentian's nickname, while the Axe Demon was the nickname they gave Chu Mang. You're not good looking. Yishi joked, causing the surrounding people to burst into laughter. That person continued, but I, your elder brother, am extremely powerful, I'm definitely stronger than the sleeping god and Axe Demon. Pfft. Who knows? Yishi's lips twitched. That person laughed, why would I lie to you? Your elder brother's cultivation base is at the 3rd level of Yuanfu, how can I be compared to the sleeping god who sleeps every day? Why don't you be my wife? Yishi rolled her eyes, ignoring him. That person still wanted to say something, but he abruptly shut his mouth as he stared into the distance, his countenance stiffening. When Yishi saw the expression on that person's face, her clear eyes also turned in that direction. Abruptly, the smile on her face vanished as her countenance paled. Yishi, what's wrong? Chu Mang asked. Qin Wentian's gaze followed Yishi's line of sight, only to see a group of silhouettes walking over from afar. The person in the middle was clad in luxurious golden robes, exuding an aura of nobility. Other than a few close to him, the others were merely his guards. Qin Wentian's gaze swept over, instantly seeing through the cultivation bases of these people. None of them were weak. The young man in the middle had a cultivation base at the 5th level of Yuanfu, while the weakest among the guards had a cultivation base at the 3rd level of Yuanfu. Such a level of strength couldn't be considered much in the context of the 9 continents, but in the surrounding smaller countries, they were merely subsidiary powers of the major powers of the 9 continents. To have such a lineup, it was already considered extremely powerful. Most probably, the statuses of these people in Qiyun were extraordinary. These people instantly arrived at the Gazing Dragon Mountain rampart, glancing at the surrounding stone platforms. The middle-aged man smiled. The disciples of my Qiyun country cultivate diligently, not bad. We pay our respects to the second young master. Several people walked over, bowing to the middle-aged man. The young man in the middle nodded his head, as he emotionlessly stated, the weather has been good for the past few days. Tomorrow, the princes will be here to comprehend the Gazing Dragon Mountain rampart. All of you, step back and give up your positions. Yes. Everyone nodded. Knowing the identity of this young man, they naturally understood what to do. Every year at the start of the year, the various princes would come here to comprehend the Gazing Dragon Mountain rampart. This was a type of tempering exercise, and the emperor would test the candidates to see who could comprehend the most insights. Every year at this time, the princes would pay the most attention to it. Hence, this young man came here to scout the path. Naturally, there were no rules, he was only willing to come, and it was a form of goodwill. The status of this young man was also extraordinary, he was the second son of a king. Naturally, he had to maintain a good relationship with the various princes. The eyes of the young man shifted over, landing on Yishi. Yishi, no matter what, you are still a princess. Why would you come here every day? Are you here to mourn the death of that lowly slave? Yishi paled when she heard the words of the young man. She coldly replied, your mother is the lowly slave. Yishi, you insulted the princess consort. Even if His Highness is benevolent and doesn't want you to suffer, don't blame me for being impolite. The young man faintly spoke, as he glanced at Qin Wentian and the others beside Yishi. The few of you better disappear tomorrow. After speaking, he flicked his sleeves and turned to leave. After which, he continued in a clear voice, tomorrow, when the princes come here to comprehend the Gazing Dragon Mountain rampart, remember, no one is allowed to occupy the stone platform at the front. As the sound of his voice faded, the group of people left, leaving behind a pale-faced Yishi. The others all left, walking to a more remote stone platform and sat down. They didn't occupy the best seats. Tomorrow, when the royal clan of Qiyun arrived, they couldn't afford to offend them. Yishi, what's wrong? Qin Wentian asked in a low voice, noticing the change in Yishi's expression. At this moment, Yishi's eyes were red, as though she was filled with sorrow. Nothing. Yishi shook her head. If you want to cry, just cry it out. In front of Wentian Gij, there's no need to feel restrained. Qin Wentian gently hugged Yishi's shoulders as he gently spoke. Yishi wiped her tears away, as she leaned on Qin Wentian's shoulder. Her tears flowed unceasingly. Wentian Gij, do you know why I come here so often? It's because my mother died at the Gazing Dragon Mountain rampart. Yishi spoke, as her tears flowed uncontrollably. So it turned out that Yishi's father was actually a king of Qiyun. However, he was a carefree person, and didn't like royal authority. He preferred to live a carefree life, and after meeting Yishi's mother, he was extremely happy. Yishi's father's talent was extremely high, and he would often come here to comprehend the Gazing Dragon Mountain rampart. One day, the elder brother of the wife of another king fell in love with Yishi's mother, and insulted her. The two of them had a conflict, and in the end, Yishi's mother was killed. After Yishi's father rushed to the scene, he killed the other party to take revenge. At the same time, he killed his way to the king's residence, injuring him. However, he himself was also heavily injured, and was pursued everywhere. That king was none other than the father of the young man who killed Yishi's mother, and also the uncle of that young man. The carefree Yishi's father didn't have any authority, and her parents were in a miserable state. Eventually, the crown prince stepped out to mediate the situation, and summoned Yishi's father to be his personal bodyguard. Only then did the matter come to an end. Hence, Yishi frequently came to the Gazing Dragon Mountain rampart. After Yishi finished her story, Qin Wendian hugged the young girl, silently consoling her, as he lightly patted her on the shoulder. Chapter 303. Chu Mang was infuriated when he heard this. Yishi's father didn't like power and was a carefree king. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen? However, Fan Le narrowed his eyes. Yishi, does the elder brother of the king consort know of your mother's identity? I'm not sure. Yishi shook her head, only to see Fan Li's eyes flickering. That day, your mother would definitely reveal her identity, yet he still dared to do such a thing. I'm afraid things aren't as simple as they seem. You're saying that he was instructed by King Yi, but he was also killed by my father. Yishi wiped away her tears, bitterly smiling as she shook her head. Brother Wentian, Big Bro Chu Mang and Fan Le, please leave this place quickly. That young man earlier was the second son of King Yi. I'm afraid he would implicate all of you. Silly lass, it's fine. Your bro Mang is also a prince, and his elder brother is the emperor of an entire country. Qin Wendian smiled. Qiyun was just a small country at the borders of the Ouyang aristocrat clan, so he didn't really care too much about it. In the Moon continent, any power could easily annihilate an entire country. Yishi glanced at Chu Mang in bewilderment. Big Bro Chu Mang, is this true? Wentian allowed Big Bro to be the emperor, but Big Bro wants me to roam the world with him. Chu Mang honestly replied. Yishi was confused by his words, but as they continued chatting, the atmosphere soon became more relaxed. Qin Wentian and the other two were actually very ordinary. Qin Wentian was gentle, quiet, and had a radiant smile on his face. Fatty Fan Le loved to joke around, but he was actually a very good person. Chu Mang was honest and straightforward, even giving off a feeling of silliness. All three of them were ordinary people, but when the three of them were together, they gave off a sense of relaxation and joy. The weather on the second day was still as good as ever. Sunlight cascaded down onto the earth, yet the Gazing Dragon Mountain rampart was exceptionally tranquil. Only a few people were seated on the stone platform at the front of the Gazing Dragon Mountain rampart. Brother Wentian, let's go. Yishi tugged at Qin Wentian's sleeve and saw that Qin Wentian was already sitting there quietly. He smiled at her and said, Yishi, will your father come today? Yes, for the sake of his safety, His Highness made him his personal bodyguard. He is very good to father, so he should come today. Yishi nodded lightly. Then you can see your father. Why do you want to leave? Qin Wentian smiled gently. However, Yishi was still slightly worried. Sleeping God, it's better for you to come over. That's not a place for you to stay. Someone not far away tried to persuade him. You fellows, don't be unable to differentiate good from bad. Every year, the princes come to the Gazing Dragon Mountain rampart to comprehend. It's an extremely important matter. If you offend them, only death awaits you. Thank you for your kindness. Isn't he here as well? Qin Wentian pointed to a person not far away. There was a swordsman with a rusty sword strapped to his back. He sat there quietly, as though there was nothing around him. The crowd rolled their eyes. Who was this fellow? Even the princes would be polite to him, yet this sleeping god actually dared to compare himself to him. Brother Wentian, he's the #1 swordsman in Qiyun, 13. His cultivation base is at the 6th level of Yuanfu, and his mandate of swords has already reached the transformation boundary. Yishi explained in a low voice. Qin Wentian glanced at the young swordsman in astonishment. A cultivation base at the 6th level of Yuanfu didn't cause him to be surprised, but to have already reached the transformation boundary with his mandate of swords at such a low cultivation level was truly shocking. He does have some of my demeanor, but he's still a little lacking. Fan Lu grinned, his words causing Yi Shi to roll her eyes. This fatty only knew how to boast. From afar, the sound of the wind whistling could be heard. The gazes of the crowd shifted in that direction, only to see a group of 30 to 40 silhouettes flying over. In front of them, the second son of King Yi, who had arrived yesterday, was leading the way. When he saw the scene from afar, he furrowed his brows and increased his speed, instantly landing on a gigantic boulder in front of the gazing dragon mountain rampart. His eyes flickered with a cold light as he stared at Qin Wendian and the rest. "Didn't I tell you yesterday? Why are you still here?" The young man angrily rebuked. Killing intent flickered in his eyes as he stared at Yi Shi. "Yi Shi, do you think I won't dare to kill you just because His Highness is benevolent? Why can't we be here?" Fan Lu placed his hands on his hips as he stared at the young man. "If it weren't for the fact that His Highness is here today, I would definitely kill all of you. You have 10 breaths of time to scram," the young man icily stated. As the sound of his voice faded, a few silhouettes stepped forward as a cold aura gushed forth, enveloping Qin Wendian and the rest. Behind them, the 3 princes stood in the center. Their ages varied, but all of them exuded an extraordinary aura. At this moment, a middle-aged man beside one of the princes stepped out. "Shi, why are you here? Leave quickly." "Father." Yi Shi stared at the middle-aged man as she lowered her head. After which, she turned to Qin Wendian and said, "Brother Wendian, let's go." "Yi Shi, this place has no owner, anyone can come here to comprehend. There are so many seats here, where can't we sit? Let's sit here." Qin Wendian smiled at Yi Shi. His smile was serene, as though he didn't know what kind of situation he was in. How impudent. The killing intent in the young man's eyes was unmasked as he swept his gaze over the silhouettes on the 3 stone platforms. Qin Wendian, Yi Shi, Chu Mang, and Fan Lu were all extremely good seats. Although there were many other seats that directly faced the gazing dragon mountain rampart, with these few people in the middle, it was undoubtedly a disharmonious sight. Even Swordsman 13's seat was slightly to the side. Evidently, he had to give face to the royal clan of Qiyun. "Brother 13. At this moment, a prince called out to Swordsman 13. 13 turned his gaze over and nodded to the others, "Your Highness. Brother 13 is extremely hardworking in his cultivation. I hope to break through to the Heavenly Dipper realm as soon as possible, and catch up to the glory of the seniors." That prince smiled politely. 13 calmly replied, "Your Highness praises me too much." The prince turned his gaze onto Yi Shi as he spoke to Yi Shi's father, "Uncle Yi, Yi Shi has already grown up. Quickly let her come over." Yi Shi's father hesitated for a moment before speaking to Yi Shi, "Yi Shi, come over here." Yi Shi glanced at her father before shifting her gaze onto Qin Wendian and the others beside her. She shook her head, "Father, these are my friends Brother Wendian, Brother Chu Mang and Fatty Fan Lu. Don't be ridiculous." Yi Shi's father reprimanded. He then turned to Qin Wendian and the others, "Everyone, Yi Shi is still immature. You guys should leave this place first. Uncle Yi, we are here to comprehend the gazing dragon mountain rampart. There are so many seats here, even if all of these people wanted to comprehend it, there would be more than enough seats. Why must we leave?" Fan Lu asked. "Don't harm Yi Shi," that prince indifferently stated. Undoubtedly, he was implying that the others could be killed without mercy. The young man nodded, he instantly knew what to do. With a wave of his hands, 3 silhouettes stepped out, all of them exuding a cold killing intent. "Yesterday, I reminded you guys that the Crown Prince will be here today to comprehend the gazing dragon mountain rampart. Since you guys want to court death, I shall grant you your wish," the young man coldly stated. The cultivation bases of these 3 weren't weak, and the auras they exuded were all at the 5th level of Yuanfu. Qin Wentian and the other two were all very young. Other than Chu Mang, who seemed to be slightly more mature, around 20 years of age, Qin Wentian and Fan Lu weren't even 20 years of age yet. 3 5th-level Yuanfu cultivators would be able to kill them with ease. The spectators from afar all felt that it was a pity. The sleeping god hatchet demon usually had a sense of humor, but why was he so rigid at this moment? He didn't know when to advance or retreat. Bro Mang, what they mean is that as long as they are here, we have no choice but to scram. What do you think we should do? Fan Lu grinned, but his eyes flickered with a cold light. Should I do it, or should you? Chu Mang directly asked. Let me do it, there's no need for Bro Mang to act. Fan Lu grinned. After which, a bright light flashed as he released his arrow astral soul. A bow appeared in his hands, gleaming with resplendent light. Michem. The spectators were all taken aback. This fatty actually wanted to fight directly. His opponents were 3 5th-level Yuanfu cultivators. Courting death. One of them instantly dashed towards Fan Lu, punching out with the force of a gigantic boulder, containing terrifying might. However, at the same instant, the arrow in Fan Li's hands exploded forth, resembling a golden bolt of lightning. Atop the golden bolt of lightning, a fiery glow could be seen. Fast, Fan Lu and Chu Mang were all proficient in archery, and Fan Lu had also comprehended the first level of insight of the mandate of archery, instant strike. Instant strike had already entered the advanced realm, and the speed of the arrow was 4 times faster compared to ordinary arrows. The explosive power of an arrow was already extremely strong. The arrow released from the bow was akin to a beam of light, and its speed was 4 times that of an ordinary arrow. Chi! A crisp sound rang out as the gigantic boulder fist shattered apart. The arrow instantly arrived, and the countenance of that person drastically changed when he sensed the might of the arrow. His astral soul instantly erupted forth, and his entire body turned to stone. With a thunderous boom, the arrow slammed into his petrified body, causing cracks to appear on it. However, his opponent managed to grab hold of the arrow and forcefully pull it out. But at the same time, the second and third arrows pierced through. With a light poochie sound, that person's petrified body was pierced through, and a golden flaming arrow pierced through his forehead. Everything happened in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint. The eyes of the other two narrowed as they forcibly halted their steps. However, Fan Lu only grinned at them as he unleashed a flurry of arrows. Streaks of golden lightning arced through the air, and in the blink of an eye, the 3 5th-level Yuanfu cultivators had all fallen. This scene caused the gazes of the spectators to freeze. This fatty's cultivation base was also at the 5th level of Yuanfu, and he could control the will of his mandate. Not only that, there was also the power of his bloodline within his arrows. Fan Li's arrow didn't descend, but was aimed straight at the young man, the son of the king. Fan Lu grinned, yet the feeling he gave off was akin to the smile of a devil. The countenance of the young man instantly paled. Chapter 304. A smile broke out on Qin Wentian's face as he stared at Fan Li's strength. Experts who were proficient in archery were all exceedingly proficient in offense. Not only was Fan Li's cultivation base at the 5th level of Yuanfu, he also possessed the bloodline of the Empyrean Flames, and had comprehended 3 different types of mandates. Fan Li's 3 astral souls were, Archer Astral Soul, Devil Face Astral Soul, and Flame Astral Soul. The 3 types of mandates he had comprehended were naturally derived from his astral souls. The mandate of arrow, instant kill, the mandate of flame, ignition, and the mandate of spirit, control. The mandate of spirit was the most marvelous. It was an extremely rare mandate that was extremely difficult to comprehend. It originated from Fan Li's second astral soul. His mandate of instant kill and mandate of flame had already reached the advanced boundary, but his mandate of spirit was still at the initial boundary. Moreover, as far as Qin Wentian knew, the first realm of spiritual will was control. But in the future, this kind of willpower was ever-changing and could derive very terrifying abilities. Just like Fatty's catchphrase, Fatty was a genius. His will of flame was exceptionally strong because his bloodline was also the power of flame. It was easy to imagine just how powerful these three abilities were when complemented by the bow and arrow. 3 experts of the same realm were killed by the arrows without any ability to resist. As for the second son of King Yi, the instant he was locked onto by Fan Li's arrow, he could already feel the aura of death looming over him. The smile on Fan Li's face was that of a devil. Yi Shi's mouth gaped open. That wretched Fatty is so formidable. She glanced at Qin Wentian beside her as she whispered, "Brother Wentian, Fan Lu, don't worry, we're here." Qin Wentian said softly. Looking at Qin Wentian's clear eyes, Yi Shi smiled and nodded, "Okay. I'm Yi Ching of King Yi's residence. Think about what you're doing." The young man stared at Fan Lu as he spoke. Although Fan Li's arrow was aimed at him, he didn't believe that Fan Lu would dare to kill him. "Little prince, you scared me to death." Fan Li's body trembled involuntarily. Coupled with the rich expressions on his face, his actions caused many in the crowd to perspire. This Fatty was truly amusing. Fatty is courting death today. What a pity, you won't be able to see it. Fan Li's gaze abruptly turned cold as a light flashed past his eyes. "Second young master, be careful." Someone at the side roared. However, it was too late. The speed of the flaming arrow was extremely fast. A soft sound rang out, and Yi Ching didn't even have time to defend. The arrow pierced through his forehead, instantly killing him. Yi Cheng's eyes were wide open. He died with everlasting regret, as if he couldn't believe what had just happened. That unremarkable Fatty really didn't hesitate to shoot him to death. Such a decisive killing intent caused the hearts of the princes to skip a beat. Together with Qin Wentian, Fan Lu had experienced a terrifying storm in Chu. He had personally witnessed the tyranny of the 9 mystical palace, the tyranny of Chu Tianjiao, the destruction of the Emperor's Star Academy, and after that, he had followed Qin Wentian to the Moon Continent. He was no longer the young Fatty whom Qin Wentian had met in the dark forest. Under that fat body was a firm and cold heart. He would not show any mercy to those who wanted to kill him. Fatty was very vengeful. Boom! A terrifying aura abruptly erupted forth. Yi Cheng's astral protector souls were unleashed as their killing intent gushed forth. Their silhouettes flickered as they lunged towards Fan Lu. However, at this moment, a terrifying pressure locked onto them. The burly young man who had yet to make a move suddenly took out a similarly resplendent arrow, yet the pressure he exuded was even more terrifying. Bzzz, 9 arrows pierced through the air. His mandate of archery had already reached the transformation boundary. Chi, chi, chi. Crisp sounds rang out as the silhouettes of the guards fell one after another. In an instant, only one person remained. He stood in the air, his body trembling uncontrollably. An incomparably intense terror could be seen in his eyes. Who were these people? Among the guards of Yi Cheng, the strongest was only at the 7th level of Yuanfu. Chu Mang was also at the 7th level of Yuanfu, but his combat prowess wasn't something these guards could compare to. With an 8-fold instant speed attack, Chu Mang directly suppressed his opponent. How weak. Fan Lu spoke with disdain. Big bro Chu Mang, this guy is already so frightened, why don't you just let him go? Chu Mang nodded his head as the arrows vanished into thin air. However, at this moment, the hearts of the spectators couldn't remain calm. The 3 princes stared at Chu Mang. This man had a cultivation base at the 7th level of Yuanfu, and his mandate had already reached the transformation boundary. He could easily kill 7th level Yuanfu cultivators with ease. This meant that if Chu Mang wanted to kill them, he would definitely be able to do so. Those who still want us to scram, speak up. Chu Mang stared at the people in front of him as he coldly spoke. The people in front of him were as silent as cicadas in winter, not a single one dared to speak. This time around, the majority of those who came here had a cultivation base at the middle 3rd level of Yuanfu. There were 4 at the 7th level, and only 1 at the 8th level. After all, the 3 princes were only here to comprehend the Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart. How could they have imagined that they would encounter such a situation in the territory of Qiyun? Not only that, the 3 of them were extremely outstanding. They couldn't be sure of Chu Mang's combat prowess. But based on the fact that he could instantly kill a 7th level Yuanfu cultivator, he might even be able to fight against an 8th level Yuanfu cultivator. If both sides were to engage in a battle, the best-case scenario would be that the royal clan would be able to take down the 3 of them, but they would also suffer heavy losses. Not only that, if Chu Mang was determined to kill one of the princes, they didn't know if they would be able to stop him. You guys don't seem to be from Qiyun, right? Where are you from? One of the princes standing beside Yishi's father asked. His countenance was calm, without the slightest hint of anger. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. There's no need for you to know. Qin Wentian indifferently replied. There are many seats here, if you want to cultivate, feel free to do so. If you want to fight, feel free to do so as well. That prince turned his gaze onto Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian was about the same age as Fan Le, younger than Chu Mang. The 3 of them seemed to be friends, but he couldn't tell who was the leader. But the strongest among them should be none other than Chu Mang. You guys killed the son of King Yi. Regardless of whether I pursue this matter or not, I'm afraid King Yi would never forgive you. Have you considered the consequences? That prince calmly continued. Yishi furrowed her brows. There were many experts in King Yi's manner, and the strongest among them was at the 8th level of Yuanfu. King Yi himself was also at the 8th level of Yuanfu. Although Chu Mang was powerful, if King Yi were to kill him, I can see that the talent of the 3 of you is extraordinary. Are you interested in becoming a guest elder of my manor? The prince continued, wanting to rope in Qin Wentian and the other 2. As long as Qin Wentian and the rest agreed, he would help Qin Wentian and the other 2 to deal with King Yi. Many in the crowd felt their hearts trembling. It was said that the second prince cherished geniuses, and indeed, it was true. These people had killed the son of King Yi, and if the second prince wanted to protect them, he would undoubtedly form a grudge with King Yi. An expression of astonishment appeared on Fan Li's face. Becoming a guest elder? Guard? Fan Le mocked, you really overestimate yourself. Qin Wentian directly ignored him. He turned to Yishi's father, Uncle Yi, I wish to ask you a few questions on behalf of Yishi. Would you be willing to come over for a chat? Yi Zhang's eyes flickered when he heard Qin Wentian's words. After which, he glanced at the second prince beside him, only to hear the second prince laughing, Uncle Yi, you can go ahead. Yi Zhang nodded his head as he walked towards the stone platform where Qin Wentian was seated. Father! Yi Shi called out. Yi Zhang glanced at Yi Shi, before shifting his gaze onto Qin Wentian. He didn't know where his daughter got acquainted with such powerful young geniuses. Uncle Yi, take a seat. Qin Wentian smiled. After which, he took out a crystal pearl and infused his astral energy into it. Instantly, a layer of water droplets enveloped the crowd, isolating them from the outside world. This was a treasure Qin Wentian had obtained after killing the divine inscriptionists that day. It had a certain level of defensive properties, and could even isolate sound. Uncle Yi, our conversation can't be heard from the outside. Qin Wentian smiled, I've heard Yishi speak about Aunt Yi before. No matter what, Uncle Yi is still a king, yet the elder brother of a princess dared to do such a thing. Don't you find it strange? Both he and Fan Le had their suspicions. Yi Zhang's cultivation base was at the 7th level of Yuanfu, and he should be able to sense that there was something fishy going on. I'm not someone from Qiyun. I came here by chance and have been acquainted with Yi Shi for a very long time. I've always treated her like a younger sister. Uncle Yi, feel free to speak your mind, I might be able to help you out a little, Qin Wentian replied. Yi Shi also looked at her father. Yesterday, Qin Wentian and Fan Le had spoken to her in detail about this matter. She also wanted to know if her father knew anything. Father. Yishi called out, causing Yizheng to sigh. I also knew that there was something fishy about this matter. That's why I've been by the side of the second prince all these years, wanting to find out if King Yi was involved. In the end, I only managed to find some clues that caused me to despair. The second prince was involved? Qin Wentian asked, his words causing Yi Zheng's eyes to flicker with a strange light. He silently mused at how intelligent this person was. Yes, there's a high possibility that the second prince was the mastermind. Yi Zheng nodded, his eyes flashing with pain. Why? Yi Shi paled. Her clan had never had any grudges with the second prince. Because of the Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart. Qin Wentian stared at Yi Zheng as he asked. He had heard from Yi Shi that the princes were comprehending the Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart. In Qiyun, this was an extremely important matter, as it would determine their status. And as for Yi Zheng, he had already comprehended the Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart for many years. Yes, he had long hinted to me that he wanted me to assist him. However, my heart wasn't interested in power and authority, so I didn't agree. Who would have thought that he would use such a method to keep me by his side, forcing me to comprehend the Gazing Dragon Mountain Rampart every year? I have to share my insights with him so that he would be able to surpass the other two princes. Yi Zheng clenched his fists as he spoke. Why do you still want to teach him? Yi Shi didn't understand. For the sake of revenge, and also for your sake. Yi Zheng stared at Yi Shi. As your father, I'm already riding a tiger, and there's no way for me to back down. The second prince has always been on guard against me, and I don't even have a chance to act against him. What would you do if I dared to disobey him? Qin Wentian nodded his head. The reason why he could guess so much was because he had always known that there were people following Yi Shi. In the past, he thought that it was Yi Shi's clan protecting her, hence he didn't pay much attention to it. But after learning of Yi Shi's story yesterday, he immediately understood that it wasn't protection, but surveillance. Don't worry, Uncle Yi. Big Bro Chu Mang intentionally let one of them go because he wanted him to inform King Yi. Today's matter will definitely be settled. Qin Wentian calmly stated, his words causing Yi Zheng's eyes to narrow. The reason why he told Qin Wentian so much was because he wanted Qin Wentian to bring Yi Shi away from this troublesome place. Only then would he be able to act without any qualms. However, Qin Wentian actually said that today, this matter would be settled. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.